begin formally.
He's just joining there.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Before we begin, I would like to briefly set out the basis on which this meeting will operate. The new meetings regulations allow formal local government meetings to be held on a virtual basis without elected members being physically present together in the same place. In practical terms, this means that the Combined Authority Board and executive committees will hold virtual meetings on the dates agreed previously by our board at our annual meeting in June of 2020. The virtual meetings will be held using Zoom meeting software. All notices and documents relating to virtual meetings will be published and circulated electronically. The conduct of virtual meetings will reflect as closely as possible the arrangements for physical meetings set out in the Combined Authority's Constitution. Voting will be dealt with by the chair asking each voting member individually how they wish to vote rather than by a show of hands. The press and public will be able to observe meetings in real time by using a link on the meeting's web page. Decision statements and minutes will be published in the normal way. These are temporary arrangements pending the relaxation of social distancing requirements. If we experience any technical difficulties, I will adjourn the meeting briefly while officers try to resolve these. If a board member loses connection, I will also call a short adjournment while we try to reconnect them. If this is not possible and the meeting remains quorate, we will continue. If we become inquorate, the meeting will be closed and rescheduled. We have received a number of questions from Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I would invite Councillor de Prey, the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, to ask those when we reach the relevant items. Can I ask all board members to keep your microphones muted unless you wish to speak, and this will minimise the background noise, but also keep your video turned on throughout the meeting to demonstrate your presence and allow everyone to follow who is speaking. And also please use the raised hand function to indicate if you wish to speak. Today is Holocaust Memorial Day, of course, and we remember those who were murdered simply for who they were. I'd also today like to offer my congratulations to Ross Renton on his appointment as the principal of ARU Peterborough, and look forward to working closely with Ross in the future. We move on to part one, the governance items. I will begin by calling the names of all members of the Combined Authority Board in alphabetical order to establish their presence for the record. We have received apologies from Councillor Ryan Fuller, leader of Huntingdonshire District Council, and from Jess Borden, Director of Primary Care at the CCG. I know several members need to leave at 1:30, and we have Councillor John Nish here substituting Ryan Fuller. And again, going back to that 1:30 deadline, the Combined Authority meetings, we get through a lot of business and we do a lot of things in these meetings, of course, but they do often take a long while. So I'd ask members to be as sensible as possible in your mutterings today to make sure that we have the ability to reach the end of the meeting before 1:30 to allow those members who have to leave a cup of tea before their next meeting. I will begin by calling out the names of those members with voting rights. Austin Adams.
Present.
Councillor Anna Bainey.
Present.
Councillor Chris Bowden.
Present.
Councillor Steve Count.
Present.
Councillor Lewis Herbert.
Present.
Councillor John Holditch.
Present.
Councillor John Nish.
Present.
And Councillor Bridget Smith.
Present.
And our non-voting cooperative board members are Councillor Ray Bisbee.
Present.
And Councillor David Over.
Present.
Welcome everybody. Does anybody wish to declare any interest in today's meeting? No. So you can obviously declare an interest at any point through the meeting should it occur to you later on. We move on to item 1.2, which are the minutes of the 25th of November 2020. We're being asked to confirm these as an accurate record. If any member wishes to raise a question on the accuracy of these minutes, could you raise your hand now? And I see no objections, so we will take the minutes as approved. And we move on to item 1.3 and 1.4. There are no petitions or public questions at this time, but we will, as I mentioned previously, be taking questions from overview and scrutiny. Item 1.5 is the forward plan, which is published on the web and updated regularly. If there are any decisions on the forward plan which are allocated to the executive committees, but which members think should be dealt with by the Combined Authority Board instead of the board will need to take a view. Are there any committee decisions which members would want to be reserved for the board? Okay, so we're being asked to approve the forward plan. I'm moving these recommendations from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Just a wave of the hand would be fine.
Happy to second.
Councillor John Nish is first up. So, and I haven't seen anybody looking as if they're vehemently opposed to the forward plan. So we will take that as unanimous and we will move on to item 1.6. Change in membership of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, and we're going to bring in Robert Parkin, our monitoring officer, to introduce the report. Robert.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, members. I'll be brief on this one. The Combined Authority Constitution reserves a right to myself as monitoring officer to accept nominees to committees where there is a change, and that's in order to ensure a full complement of committee members. This is a paper which essentially reports in those nominations and the acceptance of those nominations in respect to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. The nominations took effect on the 5th of January, I think, and those in respect of Councillor Mark Howell as representative of Cambridgeshire County Council, in the place of Councillor Ian Bates, and the appointment of Councillor Ian Bates as a substitute member in the place of Councillor Roger Hickford, again, Transport and Infrastructure Committee. So members, you're asked today to ratify those appointments. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, I'm moving from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Holditch. Again, I see nobody dissenting at Councillor Bates and Councillor Hickford's involvement, so we will move on as fully unanimous, and we will go to item 1.7, which is the appointment of the Combined Authority Returning Officer, and I believe Mr. Hill will be leaving the call at this particular time. We have a question on this report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So Councillor Dupre, perhaps you would enlighten us with your question. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Herbert, you have your hand up.
So I was going to ask you a question, but I thought there was something from Overview and Scrutiny first.
Yeah, well, I will take Councillor Dupre. If Councillor Dupre doesn't come to the screen, here we go. And then I'll bring you in, Councillor.
All right, thanks.
Councillor Dupre, you have a question.
I'm sorry, Mayor, there was a problem with the login which the officers have just sorted for me. I thought I was on the call, but it appears I wasn't. Question then on item 1.7. The report suggests an election in May can be run within the budget envelope already envisaged. With the vast majority of local authorities reporting that they will struggle to run an election this year, is the Combined Authority confident that it can run a free and fair election under COVID restrictions and within the budget envelope suggested?
Yes, thank you. So the estimates of election cost have been received from constituent councils and are being checked by officers. Whilst increased costs are expected due to COVID-19, there are also savings to be made, with some common costs being shared across a number of other elections taking place at the same time as the mayoral election. We are currently expecting the overall cost of the mayoral election to be affordable from the election reserve we've built up over the past 4 years. Okay. So thank you, Councillor Dupre. The monitoring officer will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Members, this report is seeking your approval to appoint John Hill, who's the Chief Executive, Co-Chief Executive of the Combined Authority, as the Combined Authority Area Returning Officer for the purposes of Article 6 of the regulations the mayoral elections order regulations affecting combined authorities. There's an obligation in those regulations to appoint from among its officers or an officer of the constituent council to be the combined authority returning officer in relation to the election. The report sets out that John Hill was the CARO for the 2017 elections. He's also appointed as the police area returning officer for the election expected in 2021. It's a significant and complex role, and clearly that experience is vital in delivering that. The alignments and efficiencies are I think, are clearly implied that the role of CARO and PARO clearly will align, as it were, and offer efficiencies in the process. As the answer was just given to the overview and scrutiny question, there's an expectation that the costs will be met within the budget provision that we have for this, but as the last line of the financial implications says, if there are further cost estimates to be brought, then they will be brought. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor Herbert.
Well, Mayor, the elections were cancelled in 2020, and there's been a lot of confusion because on two calls, one on a Monday, I think only 2 weeks ago, the Secretary of State said that he expected the elections to be postponed to July. So part of this links to the budget, which is the issue of whether or not we end up going for all postal vote if we are going to actually run elections. There is now an exceedingly complicated set of local elections proposed in 2021. And I'm just concerned about whether, first of all, the budget is going to be accurate, and also the impact on the timing and delivery of the combined authorities work, because we've effectively got a timescale of programme and meetings with quite a gap around May, including proposals to appoint a new full-time chief executive. And I'm concerned just about the delays and that this will result in extra costs. I know that Mr. Hill probably rightly isn't on the call at the moment, but I'd just appreciate a bit more response from Mr. Parkin or Kim Sawyer in terms of what is the contingency plan if the elections get delayed.
Yeah, quite a lot of conjecture there. Of course, the latest statement from government has been that the election will go ahead in May as planned. So we will, of course, react appropriately to any changes and be able to do so, as you'd expect. I think Mr. Parkin very clearly said that should we need to find the extra funds necessary to carry out a full democratic election, then we will do so. But I'll bring in Mr. Parkin to answer anything else I may have missed there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Herbert. I think for me, firstly, it's vital that we appoint a combined authority returning officer and that takes place. We're making a decision on best information at the moment. Should further information or circumstances come along, then please be assured that if we need to come back to the board to seek further funding, for example, or if we need to give you more details, then I will absolutely make sure that takes place.
Okay, so there are no further points. I will be moving this recommendation from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Holdridge, Deputy Mayor, and I see nobody waving at me that they would not take this as a unanimous vote, so we will take it as a unanimous vote and move on to item 1.8, which is the performance report. And we welcome back Councillor du Preez.
Good morning again. There is a question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on this item. The Combined Authorities flagship £100 million affordable housing programme now has a residual RAG status of red. What plans does the Combined Authority have to address this?
Yes, so I mean, my position on this is the same as it has been throughout, that I'm confident that we will receive the finance necessary. But of course, in the meantime, we're preparing an action plan in the possible event of unsatisfactory outcome. and this will be discussed with leaders, the Housing and Communities Committee and the board. But I will repeat the point that I've made when asked on this previously, that I'm confident that we will find a solution to this problem and this delay. And I'll bring in Roberta Fulton, the Programme Manager. Would you introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Morning, everyone. So item 1.8 is the updated regular Combined Authority Performance Report, which includes an overview of delivery as at the end of January 2021. Annex 1 in front of you supports this report and continues to be updated following the format of performance reporting that was agreed by board members. The appendix provides details on how the area is delivering against its key metrics, which are GVA, jobs and housing, and other 3 graphs you can see at the top. Just to let you know, the housing metric has now been updated with recent 2019-20 data. In addition to this, the Appendix 1 also includes the RAG status of Combined Authority's key projects, as well as the overall movement of projects and a number of red projects across the entire portfolio. And this was as at the end of December 2020. That's the information at the bottom of the graph. As can be seen from this report, that 1 project has decreased in status this month, and there's also 1 red rated project across the entire portfolio. But these RAG statuses continue to be updated as part of our standard management process. Thank you very much for the quick introduction. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, it seems that Councillor Herbert is willing to put a question to you, Roberta. So, Councillor Herbert.
Well, it's more a question to yourself, James. You say, and you've said this about 3 Combined Authority board meetings in a row now, that the resolution of £45 million in delayed loans is imminent. But this has been rolling on since June 2019. So we're now 18 months into this for Argo, and it's delaying both affordable housing projects and also has wider implications in terms of the ability to move forward. So I just ask, James, when do you expect this to be sorted out? It's always tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair question, Councillor Herbert, but there's also, you have to remember that throughout this period, we've been bringing forward affordable homes in an appropriate way. We've been developing our projects, 100k homes, more 100k homes being built now, of course, and these are truly affordable homes. These are not social housing marked up in price by housing associations. We are delivering at no cost to the taxpayer, Community Land Trust homes in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Latest people have moved in Hadnam at reduced rent in the Community Land Trust there. So our housing programme is still delivering across the entirety of the county, and part of that is due to the innovative £40 million rolling fund that we brought forward as the Combined Authority, something that I'm extraordinarily proud of. And to deliver housing at no cost to the taxpayer is, of course, the ultimate goal through that fund, and that's exactly what we're doing. But as I said all the way through, I'm confident that we will find a solution with this delay with government, and that the Combined Authority £100 million housing fund and the targets which were set through that fund when we all signed the deal back in 2017 that you remember, of course, and I know this affects the deal that you have with the City Council in Cambridge as well, that we will find a solution to the proposition that's been put before us.
Well, I'm with you on a chunk of it in terms of the fact that it was a 5-year agreement, but basically your answer there, James, was I don't know. So we'll just take that as the position. But we are rolling on month after month, and about 15 schemes which are far more significant in number than admittedly a good scheme for 100k homes, and the potential of community land trusts are dwarfed by that. The investment in affordable housing that we committed to is being stalled.
Well, I don't think it is being stalled because we're bringing forward schemes constantly. Well, I mean, question to you, because we know, Councillor Herbert, you have a deal in place which was signed under the same rules at the same time. Where are you with your delivery by 2021 or 2022 in Cambridge City?
Well, we'd love to invite you to see the building that's underway. So all of the 540 homes have got planning permission. I'm very happy. Perhaps we could go on one of your electric bikes and I'll show you ironworks and timberworks, two central sites, each of which will soon have 118 affordable homes each. So I know from the work and the thoroughness of the officer team and the partnership working with the combined authority on that, how much is involved in doing things. And you know that these projects aren't simple, as with the housing associations. But we're very happy to commit that we will deliver on time.
So will you deliver by March 2021 or March 2022? Councillor Herbert, what target are you working to?
We're working to the same target as yourselves, which is March 2022, which is why I opened up with that point, because you and I remember discussions when it was quite clear that both were 5-year programs. When you know that in acquiring sites, in getting planning permission, in mobilising, in also continuing to construct through real pressures during the coronavirus epidemic, building good homes is hard work, but as I said, I'd be very keen to invite you and Councillor Bowden as chair of the Housing Committee when you've got the opportunity and when we're allowed to do such visits to see the progress that's underway. Homes with people sitting in them are there now. We've moved people in who are badly in need of that housing.
Yeah, and I'll look forward to jumping on an electric bike next to you and having a ride round and seeing where your progress is. Mr. Adams.
Yes, thanks, James. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say I fully support the view that this will get resolved. And my question was, is there anything that we can do as a board, either collectively or as individuals, to help here?
I think this is an interesting situation because those of us, I think there's Councillor Herbert, Councillor Count, Councillor Holditch and myself, we're all fully aware that what we signed in 2017 was a 5-year deal to deliver these houses. The City Council in Cambridge, as Councillor Herbert has just said, are working to a 2022 deadline. That's exactly where we are on the combined authority. I know that the civil service from MHCLG will have somebody listening in on this call. You know, it's very clear that that's what we've always been working to, and the combined authority is in a strong position to hit its targets and exceed its targets, and of course on top of that, as I mentioned, deliver 100k homes and community land trust housing as well at no cost to the taxpayer. So we're very proud of our housing record, what our delivery record, and our ability to meet the targets as set out in the devolution deal. And as I said, Mr. Adams, I'm very confident that we will find a resolution to this very shortly. I hope that as a board, you know, I'm pretty sure we're unanimous on this because, as I said, Councillor Herbert is in the same situation with his housing in Cambridge as we are across the rest of the combined authority. And we need to make sure that we deliver the housing that we've set out in our plans to do. So, Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. So just thinking back to when we had a very senior civil servant from MHCLG come to talk to us, my impression was that the issue of the end date was on the cusp of being resolved. So I'm not particularly worried about that. What I am really worried about is the issue which I think MHCLG are also cited on, and is probably causing them more concern, is over the value for money of the considerable sums of money that have been spent so far. So I wasn't privy to signing the devolution deal, but my understanding was that that referenced a 25,000 per unit subsidy, and actually we are some considerable factor above that on the current average subsidy level. Now, when we've discussed this before, you know, the argument to support the level of subsidy has been that actually it's far less than Homes England subsidise affordable housing with. But, you know, that's actually irrelevant because, you know, what was in our deal is what was in our deal. So I'd be really interested to hear what reassurance have we been able to give to MHCLG that actually, you know, this is delivering good value for money, and that the level of subsidy now, which is I think about 36,000 per unit, is actually, you know, acceptable in the environment that is Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So, you know, I really need to know how
I think that's a very interesting point, Councillor Smith. And of course, you refer to the meeting with the civil servant, the leaders of the Combined Authority had recently. When that civil servant brought up value for money, it was the first time in over a year of negotiations with the Combined Authority that value for money had been raised. It never been raised in any discussions between officers. And of course, all the members have seen all the transcripts of discussions between civil servants and officers. Again, it was interesting because we were given £100 million to deliver 2,000 houses. And of course, that works out at £50,000 a home. And at 36,000, we're considerably below that level. And I think it is relevant that Homes England are delivering at 60,000. I think it is relevant that Cambridge City Council are delivering at £140,000 a unit. So I think those are relevant to what the Combined Authority is doing. But I will add into the mix, Councillor Smith, we have a £40 million revolving fund, which is delivering low-cost housing through community land trusts and through 100k homes, which we've just we're building some more, as you know, in Abingdon, in South Cambs, in your patch, and these are delivered at no cost to the taxpayer. That £40 million revolving fund will continue to deliver in perpetuity, and of course that 36,000 sum will come down and down and down and down, and eventually will become less than zero if we continue to deliver houses at no cost to the taxpayer. So I'm very confident in what we're doing as a Combined Authority. We are, as I said, very confident in what we've put to government in our deal, and very confident that what we're doing is not only ticking the boxes of delivering houses for housing associations, but being massively innovative in the delivery of housing across the entirety of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Let's not forget, the housing association system has not delivered the houses necessary, and if it had, we wouldn't have a housing crisis and affordability crisis in Cambridge and in South Cambridgeshire in particular, but also the knock-on effect of that across the whole of Cambridgeshire. So it's very important for us. The job of the Mayor, the job of the Combined Authority is to innovate, is to bring forward new types of housing, is to try and break up cartel that has currently been delivering the houses. And I think it's imperative that we do so. In our community land trust, we're delivering homes at less than market rent, you know, reduced market rent. If we give a grant to a housing association and that housing association house is lived in by somebody on universal credit, the government is paying twice for that house. If that happens through our community land trust, the government only pay once through the universal credit. So there's benefit to the taxpayer, there's benefit to the individuals, and there's benefits to the nation as a whole through what we're trying to achieve. So I'm very confident in our affordability rates, the value for money for rates, and I'm very confident in the policies that we have at delivering significant change across Cambridgeshire. Okay, there are no further comments. We've been asked to adopt the
Excuse me, Mayor, I have my hand up.
And I've got mine up too.
I'm sorry, I've clicked onto the wrong thing. I'm not on panelists, I'm on attendees. So apologies, Councillor Holditch and Councillor Bailey. Councillor Holditch is top, so I'll bring him in first.
Oh, that's the first time I've been addressed as that, sir. Thank you very much. I'll take that. And I'm sure Lewis will remember this, because him and I were in the thick of the negotiation with the government over this housing stuff. Initially, it was 100 million. Then they offered 125, and then we talked to them quite eyeball to eyeball, and we got it up to 175. 75 for Cambridgeshire and 100 for the rest of the county. And the civil servants at the time turned around and said, "You can't do that, sir." And he said, "I've just done it." So civil servants didn't like it at the time, but we got it. There was no mention at that time of any 25,000 quid top. Also, what they did say, and it's not in the agreement, what the Lord said, I don't want planning permissions, I want delivery. But that's all very well, but they delayed certainly for the 9 months, probably 12 months, because they didn't write the laws upright or the Treasury upright. So therefore, there was 12 months lost. On the funding, they gave us some funding before we started, because they've actually got some money left over from their previous year's budget. And I think that's where the confusion's come, because it should be 1 year plus 4 years once we got going. And the £60,000 per house is irrelevant, because we lost, because of them not writing the deal right, we lost about 157 houses, I think, in Peterborough that Combined Authority were going to fund at a lower rate. They were then funded by the whatever it is, the government ones at 60,000 quid, and in Peterborough, the Combined Authority just couldn't compete for a little while. With the things that they were delivering. So, all in all, we've done a pretty good job all round in delivering the houses under very difficult circumstances. And certainly from what I can see in Peterborough, and certainly true in Cambridge, £35,000 a house is good value for money.
Thank you, Councillor Holditch. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we could talk about this till the cows come home. We've talked endlessly about the detail of this problem, but at the end of the day, ministers have got to decide whether they want to continue funding delivery of affordable homes in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough or not. I'm perfectly satisfied that the Combined Authority and our officers have demonstrated that we are on track to deliver to our targets, both in Cambridge City and across the wider geography. And that we will do that. And the only thing that is stopping that from happening is this perverse situation where the very government that wants to deliver affordable housing for some peculiar reason is stopping the flow of the money. I think we've demonstrated that we can meet the targets by the date originally agreed. It would, of course, be unreasonable to expect the Combined Authority to have started delivering affordable housing before it came into being. You know, that clearly was never going to happen. And I think we're all united on this board that the 5-year delivery date went to 2022. And I think there's clear evidence going back a long way, and that would be the reasonable position. So I'm sure that ministers will deal with this. They've had a lot on their plate. I think we have demonstrated excellent value for money. £36,000 per unit is pretty unarguable in one of the most expensive geographies in the country. And of course, we've delivered innovation as well through the 100k Homes project and the Community Land Trust project. And we're delivering 53 affordable homes at nil cost to the taxpayer in our current programme. And that has taken a little bit longer to get going, but now that it is all established and there, we've got communities stepping up and wanting those projects. And I know South Cambridgeshire is getting going on its 100k homes now. Fantastic. Those will only get more and better. And they are clearly a better way to deliver affordable homes for the future for our taxpayers, because they don't have to pay a single penny towards it. So over to ministers, really. If they want Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to deliver affordable homes, they need to release this funding and leave us to get on with it. We've got 16 schemes that are now being held up by this, which I think represents about 571 units. And we're delivering it, actually I think it's £34,000 per unit, not £36,000, our current average cost. That is excellent value for money. So my message to ministers, and I did take the trouble to write from the perspective of East Cambridgeshire to Luke Hall, the Minister of State for Regional Growth and Local Government, our thoughts from East Cambridgeshire. And it would be nice if the other local authority leaders did the same, so that we can get on and deliver these affordable homes, which are much needed for people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. There are no further speakers. We are, after all that discussion, asked to note the January dashboard. So we will take it that is noted and move on to item 1.9, which is the monitoring and evaluation framework 2021. And we will, and it's being presented by Mike Soper. Mike.
Apologies, Mayor, it doesn't seem that Mike's actually with us. Could I just check with Paul Rains that it is Mike who's presenting?
It is certainly supposed to be.
He appears to be on the list. I've just seen him, sorry.
He's just joined.
Hello, I was on the list. Am I back on again?
Thank you.
Hello. Right, sorry. The minute James introduced me, it cut me off, and then yeah, I've only got a couple of sentences on the monitoring and evaluation framework. Firstly, as the paper says, it's a necessity to have a M&E framework as part of the wider assurance framework for the combined authority. Really, the raison d'etre, the reason why we have the M&E framework is to ensure that where we spent money, those projects then produce the right outputs. You know, so for rail investment, for example, if a station's built, it then has the right sort of outputs in terms of passenger numbers flowing through that station, and then over time we achieve the right outcomes in terms of the economic growth that we've promised as part of those schemes. That's one example, but that's really why it's there. The main audience for the M&E framework is a Whitehall audience. They're very keen that we have all the proper procedures in place, including an M&E framework. This particular framework was shared with Whitehall at the end of November. The main comments that came back, I'm quoting, says, overall the M&E plan is excellent, ... It's at the top of their feedback. But their main comments beyond that was wanting to see now more detailed evaluation plans for the projects where the spade is in the ground. University, for example, can we write out a detailed evaluation plan for that looking forward? That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Comments, members? So there are no comments at all. So we've been asked to adopt the monitoring and evaluation framework for 2021. I'm moving the recommendation from the chair. Do I have a second, please?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Holditch. And nobody has spoken and nobody's objecting, so we will move on as a unanimous vote to item 1.10, and this is the Combined Authority Business Plan and Annual Budget. Councillor Dupre is back in the room virtually, and would you like to share the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's question on this item?
The Overview and Scrutiny Committee's question is that the Business Plan 2021 to 22 states that you will see more active travel, more work towards doubling nature, and hammering carbon emissions down to zero. Can you provide further information about what is meant in practical terms by hammering carbon emissions down to zero, especially in regard to the authority's construction and transport projects?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Councillor Dupre, and we're committed at the Combined Authority to the objective of reducing carbon emissions to net zero by 2050, and this has been reflected in existing policies such as the Local Transport Plan. The authority has also established the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Independent Climate Change Commission, which is, as you know, chaired by Baroness Brown, and the Commission will publish its report soon, and we're obviously really looking forward to that. And we will clearly be discussing the Commission's recommendations and the implications for the authority's actions and policies, and we'll set out in the response following that. And I think that the reason that we asked Baroness Brown to form the commission and to do the work, Councillor Bray, is because we have significant construction and transport projects in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. We have an economy that is demanding housing delivery, and we know that because of the very cost of housing, particularly in the south of the county. We have a burgeoning economy in Peterborough, which is showing significant growth consistently, and I want to make sure as Mayor that any policy that we put forward for growth is sustainable given the rural nature of our county, and of course you will know that projects such as Cam Metro are entirely designed to bring forward sustainable, ecologically sound growth in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So you know, I appreciate the question from Overview and Scrutiny, but I assure you we're doing everything we can to make the appropriate decisions now to hit the targets that we're putting in place. I will bring in now Roberta. Roberta Fulton will rejoin us and she'll introduce the report.
Thank you again, Mayor. Thank you again, members. So item 1.10 of the agenda is the new annual report and business plan for the Combined Authority for the 21-22 financial year. This is now the Combined Authority's third business plan, and the format remains the same as with the previous versions. It includes a section on how delivery of our key projects compares to what was included in the previous business plan for 2020-21, and also provides a key section on how our key projects and strategies are hoping to develop over the next 12 months of delivery. As a result of this, we have chosen to update the name of this document to include annual report. So it's now the annual report and business plan, just to better reflect its scope and what's included within it. As you'll be aware, previous Combined Authorities business plans have been subject to a mid-year refresh in September, along with the Combined Authorities medium-term financial plan. And we propose to do the same process again, updating this business plan at the September 21 board meeting. So in front of you, the document presented is in a Word format, but if approved at this meeting, the business plan will then be published in February in a similar layout to the last year's, but we are looking at making it a slightly more dynamic document. As members have asked to see performance and budgeting, together, the business plan will once again include a copy of the medium-term financial plan, which this board meeting has also been asked to approve. I am happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, members, any questions for Roberta? Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. So I've got a few questions. Just starting off by picking up on the question from Overview and Scrutiny, where they've asked for more detail on this term hammering carbon emissions down to zero. The other thing they mentioned was doubling nature. Now, doubling nature is, lands very well when you say it, but actually is really very complex when you try to implement it. So my own council's about to launch its doubling nature strategy. So what are the plans for the Combined Authority to actually cement in actions what they intend to do on doubling nature? And have you any plans to revisit the Fen Biosphere project, which has come on an awful long way since it was first raised, I think probably well over a year ago to us? Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of developments with that. So that's my first question.
Okay, well, I'm quite happy to take that, Councillor Smith. So we have been I've been in negotiation with those people who are looking, working towards doubling nature across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and I've asked them to fully engage with Baroness Brown in the Climate Change Commission. Clearly, as you say, the reason why there is a significant reason why Cambridgeshire has less open space and nature reserves than any other part of the country, and that's because we're the most productive agricultural county in the UK with the best agricultural land in the UK. So that's there is cause and effect there. But I've also been in discussions with local farmers to talk about the potential of bringing land into the Doubling Nature project, and again, more of this will become apparent when the Climate Change Commission reports next month.
Okay, so if I may just come back on that. So I remember when we had a really helpful briefing with Baroness Brown, and I started talking about things like doubling nature, and the response I got that this was really sort of mission creep on what the Commission were doing, that they were far more focused on carbon emissions and so on. So do they have the capacity to be giving us firm advice on doubling nature as well?
Well, I think, to repeat myself, I've asked them to work and engage with the Climate Change Commission to bring forward proposals, and I think that there are significant opportunities there. So, I don't want to preempt the work that's being done on the Climate Change Commission, nor do I want to belittle any other consideration. I want to make sure that there are recommendations coming to this board that are practical and achievable. And when you're starting at a low base of nature in Cambridgeshire, there are opportunities, and I said that those discussions are being had and are part of the wider ambition. But again, Councillor Smith, we have to be also mindful that agriculture is the major industry in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and providing food for the population is a hugely important task that is carried out by the farmers of this county. And in many cases, Councillor Smith, more carbon would be needed to produce food in less fertile soil than is possible in the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough region. So we have to bring lots of these things into consideration: depth of fenland soil, the carbon offset between producing vegetables on highland, as farmers would call it. So I think that there's lots to be discussed here, and it's a lot, as always, a much more complicated situation than initially one would consider. But I assure you, Councillor Smith, that it's in our plans and in our ambition to do this appropriately.
Thank you. May I come back with a couple of questions, please?
Of course.
Thank you. So on the grid that's on page 184, which gives sort of brief resumes of the key projects, on the £100,000 homes, it references that the first 8 homes have been completed and allocated, which is good news, but there's no mention of any actual targets for how many of these homes we are aspiring to build, and bearing in mind that I have some thousands of people on my housing list, and I'm sure colleagues here have similar numbers as well. It would just be good to know what our targets are there. And then my last question, again, is another sort of climate related one. On the 2 road schemes, I really think that, bearing in mind that the biggest carbon burden to our region is transport, we've got to start signalling as part of our road projects, what mitigations we are looking to deliver for all the carbon that actually, you build bigger roads and you get more vehicles on them. So, we have to be factoring this in. So I think, we need to start thinking about that more, and maybe we're waiting for Baroness Brown to report to us before we do that. But I think that is an urgent matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll bring in the 100k homes thing. So clearly it's a completely unique, bespoke product purely for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and I appreciate we're working together in South Cambridgeshire to deliver the first 5 there, and we've got some 40 or 50 in the pipeline to deliver across the county so far. However, if we look at the demand in Fordham for those 8, we could have built 160. If you transfer that demand across the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, that's 20,000 100k homes there is a demand for. So bearing in mind how many houses are built in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough per annum, which is between 5,000 and 6,000 maximum, you can see the depth of need for housing. And I think the interesting thing about this, Councillor Smith, is when we put forward housing opportunities and new housing developments across Cambridgeshire, we always hear an awful lot from those people who already have houses who are against new houses being built. What the 100k home project is doing is it's allowing the voice of those young people who want to buy their own home to say, please include me and please include us in this future plan for Cambridgeshire. So we have to be mindful in our targets, and this is why the Climate Commission is so important. We have to be mindful in our targets that we also include those people who are not part of the society that has housing and are not part of those people who are able to borrow money from their parents and buy housing. So we should be as ambitious as we possibly can, and the challenge is out there to the district councils and city councils in Cambridgeshire to say, yes, we will bring 100k homes forward because the demand is absolutely massive. And I will put that figure into the minds of the districts and the city councils here now. 20,000 is the estimate that we need to satisfy the demand on 100k homes. When it comes to road schemes, I think you have to look at it 2 ways. Councillor Smith and I remember that the Liberal Democrats were highly opposed to the Ely bypass when the County Council under Steve Count brought forward that scheme some years ago. What that road has done is it's reduced carbon emissions because it's stopped congestion and allowed clear traffic flow. If we look at the A10 and the massive congestion on that road, clearly a flow of traffic would be important. We also have to recognise that the vegetables that are grown on our deep fenland soil have to get from packing houses into the factory, into the farm, into the supermarkets and across the country. And that's about transport. The A47, of course, what we're doing on the A47, our plans there are to very much bring forward flood defences as part of the development of the A47 and include significant wetland opportunities as well. So I think that we need to be mindful that not doing anything to the roads can be as debilitating or more debilitating than making a solution.
If I may just, it would be really helpful if we are making claims, we're making public claims that our interventions have reduced carbon emissions. Actually, we need to be quantifying those. It's not enough for us just to say it. We've got to be evidencing this in hard figures. So I think we need to put some thought into that as we move forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Holditch.
Perhaps we ought to count the carbon emissions per body, if you like, per person, because you know it's all right saying you're reducing it, but you've got more and more people that are involved. But I just wanted to say this myth, it's a myth to say that road schemes are creating carbon. But as you just said, the road schemes that we've had the benefit of combined authority funding in Peterborough are either to develop housing for people in which to live in and so they can get there, or they, as you've just said, to put an odd lane in here to stop the queuing traffic and the standing traffic, which is more harmful to the environment and air pollution than moving traffic. So, you know, I think it's a bit of a myth to say that all road schemes are harmful.
Okay, so thank you very much, Councillor Holditch. There are no further questions or comments from members. I'm moving recommendations from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Holditch. I will, as we've had a few discussions on this, I'm happy to take this to the vote. So I'll ask each voting member of the board for their vote. Mr. Adams.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Bowden.
For.
Councillor Count.
For.
Councillor Herbert.
For.
Councillor Holditch.
For.
Councillor Nish.
For.
And Councillor Smith.
For.
Okay, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. We move on to item 1.11, relationship between risk and change control. This is a report and it will be introduced by the monitoring officer, Robert.
Thank you, members. This report is recommending to you the adoption of the relationship between risk and change control document, as is recommended to you by the Audit and Governance Committee. I shall just turn to the report itself. Essentially, the relationship between risk and change control documents is designed to essentially refine our approach to risk management and change control, and looks to develop it around our risk management strategy. I have Francesca Houston with me today, who's able to talk in more detail about the document. I'll just invite her to speak to it now.
Thank you, Robert, Chair and board members. This time last year, I was co-presenting the updated risk management strategy, which has now been embedded within the CPCA. As the CPCA evolves as an organisation, so should its governance and project management procedures, which includes risk management. In the risk management strategy, it outlines how risks should be quantified, assessed, and provided with a RAG rating for both inherent and residual score, which is used within the corporate risk register. In the relationship between risk and change control document, which is Appendix 2, this further explores how we manage risk. The document confirms the new CPCA risk appetite for all projects. Risk appetite is the amount of risk CPCA is willing to accept and tolerate per individual risk. We also ask risk to be financially assessed when appropriate. This will allow us to build contingency into our projects. This contingency can only be spent through the use of the early warning and change control processes. The paper introduces the relationship between risk and change control document and highlights the key updates within the document.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesca. I'm sure we're happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Any questions, members? So I'm going to move from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bailey. And as I've heard no Nobody has spoken and nobody's against, then we will move that forward as unanimous. And thank you very much, Robert and Francesca. We move on to part 2 of the agenda, which is item 2.1, which is the budget monitor report from January 21. We now bring forward Councillor du Preez again. Councillor du Preez.
The Overview and Scrutiny Committee has 2 questions on this item. The first question is the breakdown of the revenue position under the delivery and strategy section notes the CAM outline business case budget of 1.425 million. Could you advise what stage the outline business case is currently at and how much of the current budget has been spent? Could the detail around this be provided to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee? And the second question is the breakdown of the revenue position under the delivery and strategy section notes the One CAM Innovation Company has 6.84 million allocated, with nearly 4 million of that already spent. How will the remaining 3 million be spent by the end of March?
Okay, thank you. So the budget line reflects costs associated with the City Tunnel section of the network. There is no further expenditure against this budget line in 2020-2021. Over the summer of 2020, during the technical work to support the City Tunnel section outline business case, the segmented approach to delivering the CAM was challenged. Work was initiated to reassess the programme approach, and work is continuing to develop a single programme approach for a single network, referred to as, of course, One CAM. Details of the emerging expenditure associated with the new approach was provided to this board in the CAM update reports in August and September of 2020. So you're more than welcome to access those, Councillor du Preez. The One CAM company is question 2. The One CAM company has 1.9 million allocated against it for this financial year as an equity investment that is currently funding the recruitment costs and the non-executive director allowances. The remaining funding is held by the CPCA to support a number of work streams as set out in the CPCA board decisions of August and September of last year. As in previous years, officers will bring a paper at year end providing an analysis of all underspends, and where appropriate will recommend to the board to carry forward any unspent balances to fund activities that may extend into the new financial year. And on that, I'll bring in John Alsop to introduce the report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor. So the purposes of this report is to provide an update of the current year budget position for the 8-month period to the 30th of November 2020. On the revenue budget, the forecast outturn position is set out on the table under paragraph 3.1, and that's currently showing a favourable outturn variance of approximately 4.6 million for the year. This is largely due to a combination of underspends, the reduction in the forecast spend on the health and care sector work academy, and on the adult education budget, and also on the updated forecast spend on the bus review implementation. Both the Health and Care Sector Work Academy and the bus review implementation both being due to slippage. So any unspent budget at year end will be asked to be carried forward to continue that work in the next financial year. I would ask the board to note that we've recently received some additional grant funding of £136,000, which will provide additional support to businesses through the EU exit transition. And that's reflected both on the income side of the revenue budget and also on the expenditure side. In terms of the capital programme, the current forecast is showing a £25.8 million forecast underspend across the financial year against the approved budget. We will be reviewing all forecast underspends, that's both in revenue and in capital, to determine how much of any forecast underspend at year end is due to genuine savings and how much is due to slippage. And we will bring a report back to the board in March to request carry forward of any unspent budgets into next year where appropriate. I'd also asked the board to approve the move of £900,000 for digital connectivity from the subject to approval budget line to approved. The reason for that is due to a clerical error from a report that came to the board in September. The report discussed that report asked the board to recommend the transfer from subject to approval for this budget line of just over 1.9 million. But in the recommendations, it was set out at 1,040,000. So we're just trying to address that discrepancy. The board has also asked to approve an in-year update to our Treasury management strategy to reflect the change in recommendation from our Treasury advisors on the cap for investments in money markets. The request is to remove the total cap on on this type of investment, but whilst keeping the cap on individual investments as it is. Happy to take any questions on any of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillor Herbert has got a question. Councillor Herbert.
Well, mine's Mayor, including to transport officers as well as Mr. Alsop. We've had the report withdrawn on the CAM update, and I'm aware that there's an awful lot of work going on. James, I mean, you issued a media release with Mark MacDonald a fortnight ago, saying that Mark MacDonald had been appointed to be one of the main design contractors. And I'm aware of just how much money we've spent on Deloitte, over 1.5 million. And I think we have here, and I think the Overview and Scrutiny Committee were also asking, exactly what is the basis for the statement in the report that £1.4 million has been spent on the outline business case. As you know, my concern is that the outline business case has been shuffled off into the sidings and isn't progressing. So I'd really just like to have an update financially about what value for money we're getting on all of the spend. What Deloitte have done for the 1.56 million that we've spent on them, and where are we at on this money that's said to be being spent on the outline business case?
Yeah, well, Lewis, you know, as you're fully aware, this is all documented and all in the public domain, and we're very, very comfortable with the direction and the ambition for the CAM. And I think that the item you mentioned on the agenda that is going to be brought forward to the next board meeting in March, just so we can give you a lot more detail on that. And I think that's important to make sure you have all the answers to all the questions that you're putting, although I'm confident that you know the answers to them already. We know that we're delivering something exceptional in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and we know that to do that we have to follow the example of how to deliver major infrastructure elsewhere in the UK and elsewhere in the world. And of course, our ambition here is over and above what is usually delivered through a local authority, and rightly so, because we have one of the most advanced economies in the world with one of the worst infrastructures that you would expect alongside that. So we have to be bold and innovative, and we have to be transformational in our ambition for the county of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And in order to do that, we have to get the very best advice and the very best people on board, and that's exactly what we've been doing through Deloitte. And of course, as you're aware, the outline business case is not put in the sidelines at all, but will be developed through the course of the next 6 to 12 months, and will be an integral part of our ambition to raise the funding necessary through private and public means to deliver this world-class innovative public transport system, which is going to be serving Cambridgeshire for the next 100 to 150 years. And I'm very, very confident that what we're putting in place is the right thing to do. And I also admit there is an expense to that, Councillor Herbert. I admit that there is an expense to delivering the best system. But the bigger expense to the economy of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough would be to bury our head in the sands, put something through that was inappropriate, that didn't deliver change, that didn't deliver the housing necessary, that didn't deliver the business opportunities necessary, and completely ignored the environmental concerns of the public across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And the risk is that poor transport would do all of those things. So, I mean, I've just mentioned earlier the need for 100k homes across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. The need to develop housing across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is acute. But at the moment, our transport network does not allow us to spread the cost and spread the burden of that, nor does it allow us to deliver what is necessary to feed the economy that Cambridge City and South Cambridgeshire in particular have driven over the last 20 or 30 years.
Just ask James, it's really just a technical question then to officers. I mean, I take the point that we need to be bold on transport, but I just want to understand, what is this money, the 1.4 million that's allocated to the outline business case? Because my understanding was that with the establishment of the special purpose vehicle, that there wasn't any timetable at the moment for work on the outline business case. So it's really a technical question, James, to officers. Can we have an explanation, which has been a question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, of what this 1.4 million is and what was it spent on?
Yeah, sure. I'll bring in John.
Yeah, sorry. So in the budgetary the report, there are a couple of lines that relate to the CAM. The one which has got 1.4 million attached to it, that was the original budget, if you remember, was approved by the board, and that relates mainly to the original work done on the central tunnel system. The other line, which is just a bit further down on the report, relates to the ongoing work for the development of writing of strategies and a number of work streams relating to the development of the CAM. And there's a breakdown of all of those which came to the board meeting in August and in September. So it details all of the, in some detail, about what the expenditure and what the allocation of those costs will be for. Thank you.
Okay, so just to confirm, sorry, did you want to come in, Kim? Sorry.
I just thought it might be useful for me to just add a few comments, because I completely understand what you're saying, Councillor Herbert. I've come to you in August and September of last year. I've asked you to put an awful lot of money into the development of a different approach to the CAM that we discussed and arisen out of our discussions last summer. And as of yet, you haven't seen many outputs from that, but you're aware that there's lots of work going on, because we have been trying to keep you updated about what we're doing to progress that. I think what you're saying to me is you'd like more visibility around that progress, please. And even though there were no decisions to be made today, which is why the report was withdrawn, nonetheless, perhaps some public reports about how we're progressing all of that funding that I've asked you to invest might be useful. And I will take that on board and take that forward and feed that in as we move along with this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, for that response. I do think it would help the Combined Authority and your cause of transforming transport if we were able to give a broader update, given that it's really September last year, the last time when there was an update.
Yeah, well, as I said, we wanted to make sure that when we bring that paper to committee in March, that you have all the information at your fingertips, and I'm sure that you will relish that, Councillor Herbert, because you and I both want to see the solution to the problem.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, just to assist the committee, and I do apologise if my mind has gone a blank. I don't recall as reading off the questions from Overview and Scrutiny and the answers to this item. Apologies if I've just had a sort of memory blank for that, but we're on 2.1, aren't we?
We are, and yes, Councillor Dupre asked her questions. And,
Excuse me, sorry,
yes, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. I think, you know, what I would say, and I appreciate that you brought that forward, because I think one of the things we can say to Councillor Dupre is that on CAM financing, you know, if you want to bring the CAM financing issue to overview and scrutiny, of course, it's in your gift to do so, and we're quite happy to come to you and discuss this issue. Look, I appreciate that we are doing things here that none of us as local councillors have ever done before, and the ambition is over and above what we usually have to deal with when it comes to delivering infrastructure in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. But you know, I see Cambridgeshire and Peterborough as an international competitor with the very best clusters in the world, and I want to make sure that to aid that competitive nature that we see existing in this county, that we have a public transport solution that fits that, but also provides the very best solution for our rural county as well. And to do that, we have to put our feet into water that as councillors and local authority leaders, we probably have not dipped into before. So I will be moving, there's no further speakers, so I'll be moving the recommendations from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holditch. And we've had several discussions, so I think it's valuable to go to the vote. Mr. Adams.
Support.
Councillor Bailey. Yeah, Councillor Bowden.
For.
Councillor Count.
Support.
Councillor Holditch.
For.
Councillor Herbert.
Abstain.
Councillor Nish.
For.
And Councillor Smith.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. And so that is a majority, and we move on to item 2.2, which is the Mayor's budget for 21-22. And again, we go to John also.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so this report recommends the board to approve the Mayor's draft budget for 2021-22. The detail of that is set out in the table under paragraph 2.3, but happy to take any questions on this.
Okay, any questions at all? Councillor Herbert.
Just a question about where communication sits in relation to the Mayor's office and the budget for that, because I understand that the combined authority's got 5 staff working on communications. Does that sit within the Mayor's budget, Mr. Alsop? Or is it in the combined authority's budget?
No, the communications team is within the combined authority budget, not in the Mayor's budget.
Okay, so and it reports, I presume, to Kim Sawyer as Chief Executive then?
Yes, I think in fact Kim may be able to confirm what the line management arrangements are for that.
In fact, it reports into John Hill as my co-chief executive. So John's here if you wanted to ask any questions.
No, that's fine. I mean, the only issue that we come on to, which was the subject of a question I raised, is that a council like ours has very strict pre-election PERDA rules. And obviously, I'm just keen in the background to see that the combined authority publishes its PERDA rules, including on communications, but I'm not expecting it to be today, Mr. Hill, but we just appreciate clarity on those rules, given that we're getting close, we would hope, to a safe election.
Absolutely, Councillor Herbert.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. There are no further questions. So do I have a proposer, please?
I'm very happy to propose this, Mayor, and in so doing, just to note that I do think this represents good value for money compared with many other combined authorities. And, you know, I do note as well that we're not, you know, it's not levying a precept as other authorities do. And also just aware that the Mayor doesn't actually claim all the allowance to which he's entitled. So I'm very happy to propose this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to do so.
Nish. Thank you very much. So we will go to the vote, please. So Mr. Adams.
Support.
Councillor Bailey.
Support.
Councillor Bowden.
Support.
Councillor Count.
Support.
Councillor Herbert.
Abstain.
Councillor Holditch. I think that was a yes from Councillor Holditch. You're on mute, unfortunately.
Yes, it was. Sorry.
Councillor Nish.
Support.
And Councillor Smith.
Support.
Thank you very much. So that's a majority, and we move on to item 2.3, which is the budget and medium-term financial plan to 21 to 25. There are two questions on this report, again from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So we welcome back Councillor Du Preez.
Good morning. The two questions from Overview and Scrutiny Committee are as follows. Forecast expenditure on the CAM outline business case is £5 million for 2021 to 22 and 6.5 million in years 2022-23 and 2023-24. Will the outline business case be concluded by the end of 2024? And the second question, forecast expenditure on the CAM SPV outlined in Appendix 2C is £2 million for 2021-22. What is the spend estimate on the SPV beyond 2021-22, and why is this not included in the forecast?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Du Preez. So the medium-term financial plan provides funding until 2023-24. Work is ongoing to establish a timetable under the OneCam approach, which will be reported to the board once it is finalised with the DfT and other government departments. Your second question, similar to the previous answer, work will continue over the next year to confirm the expected ongoing costs of OneCam and appropriate funding arrangements to support these costs. This will be for agreement between the CPCA board and OneCam Limited as to who holds responsibility for the budget and future funding of this project. So again, I will go to John also. John.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So this paper is to report back to the board that we have now gone through the budget setting process for 2021-22 in accordance with the timetable agreed with the board at the November board meeting, also at which the draft budget and medium-term financial plan were agreed for consultation purposes. We've also been through the consultation exercise and the responses of which are shown at Appendix 4. The feedback from the consultation process was discussed at a recent leaders strategy meeting, and the conclusion from that was that the comments didn't include any suggestions that were specific or relevant enough to justify making any amendments to the budget or the MTFP. The overarching objective was to set an affordable and balanced budget that supports the delivery of the ambition of and the priorities of the Mayor and of the combined authority. The budget preparation has taken account of the level of reserves brought forward from previous financial years and of expected annual funding streams going forward. In accordance with Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003, I can report that the budget has been based on robust estimates, and the level of reserves, including the £1 million contingency reserve, are expected to remain at a prudent level over the lifetime of the medium-term financial plan. Also can confirm that there is no proposal to preset constituent authorities under Section 40 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992 for the 2021-22 financial year. Again, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Councillor Herbert.
Thanks, James. If you recall, and I'm not trying to underline the importance of us old stagers here, but when we were involved in discussions with government in 2017 through to 2018, including with Sajid Javid, then Secretary of State and for a while also Chancellor later, there was a commitment that there would be a devolution too. if you look at page 289 and you look at the capital programme, effectively, that's a kind of dwindling asset over the next 4 years. So I think there's basically a political question, and that is, at what stage will there be discussions with government about just making the most of the additionality that the combined authority can add? We are essentially able to benefit from devolution and leverage and focus on those disadvantaged parts of our geography. But if you look at the table 4 on page 289, the money's running out, James. And my concern is that government did say that when we got to the period of 2022 on housing, that if we'd done a good job, we would get more money. And similarly, while some of that money is a fixed amount for, I think, if I recall right, up to 30 years, some of those additional funds are going to be needed to deliver some of the transport infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, Councillor Herbert. And of course, what you will realise is, alongside that money, the original money, the £30 million a year, plus the 220 odd million pounds that we got for those transport projects, we have continued to be in negotiation with government on other projects and other funding. As you're, I mean, you will know in Cambridge that we received 227 million pounds for the Northern Fringe East. Over and above that, of course, we've been going back to government. Recently received £16.5 million for phase 2 of Peterborough University, £40 million for the upgrading of junctions on the A10, and of course we've agreed funding with government on Cambridge Railway Station, the Southern Railway Station at Cambridge. So yes, there is a dwindling fund, but also while that fund has been dwindling, we've been able to get extra funds into the combined authority, and we will continue to do so. Negotiations with government change because obviously the government we're negotiating with now is a different Prime Minister and a different cabinet to the one that we negotiated with back in 2016-17. But the ability of the combined authority to bring funding in multiple ways to this county, I think, has shown that the deal that several of us signed back in 2017 has been a success for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And we will continue to lobby into government for the appropriate funds when necessary to deliver what is needed across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Well, yeah, I mean, my follow-up, and I appreciate that point, and I accept that it is about taking opportunities which don't come along in an even way. It's when we get them. But I just think that there's a value in there being something of a clearer prospectus involving both yourself and all of the councils and other partners, because we can evidence to government that we are a sound investment. And I just think a case for Cambridgeshire and a broader statement, whilst trying to land it in a way which is in line with opportunities, should be put. And when we just think of the recovery from coronavirus, and in Cambridge, for instance, unemployment, which was around 1,400, is now 3,500. And we're not by any means the worst affected part of the geography. I just think that we do need to make that case about bounce back, about long-term growth in our zone, as well as the disadvantage in parts of our geography.
Yeah,
and
I can assure you, Councillor Herbert, that those points are being made. And of course, as you will have seen, the combined authority's prospectus is a clear statement of ambition, an opportunity for government, and we will be continuing to press that prospectus over the course of the next few months and years. And clearly, we know that we're in a battle, Councillor Herbert, because there are parts of the country that will say that they haven't had any funding. But I will say to government very clearly that nor is Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, quite frankly, when it comes to infrastructure, certainly. And yet investment here shows massive dividends back to the Treasury, which allows further investment elsewhere in the country. So we've got a clear ambition set out through our prospectus. We continue to engage closely with Secretary of States and, of course, Prime Ministers and of course, ministers to allow the combined authority to be in a strong position to gain the funding that's needed to deliver across that prospectus. And of course, I think the public are probably listening. If anybody wants a copy of the prospectus, we can get it sent to them because it does outline very clearly and very strongly the opportunities that we have in this county for growth and delivery.
Okay, I appreciate that and the efforts that you're leading. My point is just that there could be more of a collective partnership, including the business sectors. I know that you're leading on it, but I think there could be more dialogue and more partnership work on that.
Yep, and I'll take that on board, and I appreciate that point. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Sorry, just a quickie. I probably should have picked this up on the previous item. Under the draft mayoral revenue budget, we've got over £250,000 allocated for the mayor's office staff. How many people is that accounting for, please?
I'll bring in John to answer that.
Sorry, yes, yes, sorry, the previous report does state that there are 5 members of staff within the mayor's office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comments on this item on the agenda? Okay, so I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please?
Each second, Mayor.
Councillor Bailey. Again, as a budget item, I will go to the vote. Mr. Adams.
Support.
Councillor Bailey.
Support.
Councillor Bowden.
Support.
Councillor Count.
Support.
Councillor Herbert.
Abstain again.
Councillor Holditch.
Support.
Councillor Nish.
Support.
And Councillor Smith.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you very much. Another majority vote, and we will move on to item 2.4, which is the transport levy for 21-22. Again, we have a question from Councillor Dupre. Welcome back.
Thank you. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee's question is, does the transport levy amount sufficiently reflect the enormity of work that has been done and will continue to be done by the Combined Authority in the future?
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Dupre. The paper before the board explains in the tables at paragraphs 2.4 and 2.5 the cost of the functions that the levy may by law fund and the functions that the proposed levy will fund. So scrutiny could analyse those. I think it would be very, very helpful. I'll bring in Mr. Alsop to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So this report recommends the board to consider and approve the transport levy for 2021-22 and its apportionment between the 2 highways agencies, that's the County Council and Peterborough City Council. As the area's transport authority, the Combined Authority's responsibilities are summarised under paragraph 2.1. And until now, the Combined Authority has delegated a number of those duties to the 2 highways agencies. But from the 1st of April 2021, these powers are to be exercised directly by the Combined Authority. The total forecast costs of all the transport functions is set out under paragraph 2.4, but removing the income directly relating to some of those costs and the elements of the that had not previously been delegated, which had been covered within the Combined Authority's own budget, the calculated levy is just over £13 million. The apportionment method has been agreed by both the Section 151 officers from the County Council and the City Council, which results in the levies as set out under paragraph 3.2. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, members? No questions. It's all set out very clearly. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, it's not directly related, but, you know, it is sort of set out there in very stark terms, having been quite heavily involved for some time at County Council on the subject of bus services. It is very stark that the cost of concessionary fares and the budget that is required to support what is national requirement, and I'm not arguing against concessionary fares by any means, but when you compare it to the actual budget sums that we've got to put into supporting bus services, it is very, very frustrating. And I do think this has a disproportionate effect on rural areas like Fenland and East Cambridgeshire in particular, because, inevitably the concessionary fares are used where there are services. And the more they're used, the more we have to pay to cover those fares. And if the services aren't available, people can't use their concessionary fares on a service that doesn't exist, and it's just a sort of ever decreasing spiral of doom, really, for rural routes. And inevitably, because it's a statutory budget line, it's other budget lines that have to get scrutinised and looked at when costs become difficult. So I am really pleased to see this sort of coming over formally now to the Combined Authority and being taken on board. And I really look forward to the day where we can have more control over the system as a whole, and getting the right routes for people in East Cambridgeshire is absolutely critical. And we've done a lot of work on this in East Cambs, surveying every single resident in East Cambridgeshire and putting forward detailed information about what we think are good strategic network of bus services that could be well supported and take traffic off the roads. So I'm sure that will be considered at the right time. But I just think that information there about 9 million on concessionary fares, whereas you look at the supported bus services line, it is very stark and frustrating.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councillor Bailey. I mean, what I would say is, I mean, this has been the difficulty of this for the County Council and Peterborough City Council over many years has been, well documented. I remember being a county councillor and discussing this, of course. What COVID has done really is offered us a chance to reset and reevaluate and bring in franchising, which is where we're heading. That's the direction we're in. We're in discussion with Baroness Veer and her team at government to make sure that what we do will bring forward, I hope, a more comprehensive and a more balanced transport network, bus network across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And I'm very excited in particular by the demand responsive transport pilot over in Huntingdonshire, which I think will probably see us the blueprint for us for how we deliver bus services across our rural network. And I think that this is a real opportunity. But this has been a very, very difficult time for the bus industry that effectively is in existence now purely because of government bailout, and that does allow us to almost start from a clear page of paper. Councillor Holditch.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, happy to second this item. In doing so, I understand from my officers that all the appropriate officers have met and are happy, well, I wouldn't say happy with the result, but understand the result and have agreed the result. And I think it's just a pity. I think I've expressed this view to you before. I think there's 2.5 million the last time I looked at the figures, users of the concessionary fares. If we were allowed to charge them £1 a trip, I think we would be £2.5–3 million better off, that we could provide a more decent service, but which especially into rural areas. But there we go. Happy to second the report.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Count.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If John is, Councillor Holditch is seconding, I'd be happy to propose, or vice versa, whichever way round it is, because obviously it affects both of us. I'm totally happy with the figures. I do think this is a great opportunity for that reset you mentioned, Mayor Palmer, because the world that we existed in beforehand, where the county council didn't have the powers that you have, it will be a different world with this embedded inside the combined authority. You mentioned the franchising as a direction that we're going in, and I know you didn't mean that any decisions were made in that matter. You simply referred to the fact that you are compiling the information to make a case for or against that, and that is a journey that we're all on together. But as we approach that ultimate destination. There has been some information that indicates that there might be some, shall we say, surplus in the money available inside the system, which doesn't rely on the taxpayer, if franchising or even the contemplation of franchising is introduced, which may enable you to have more routes out in the open countryside, which there is a dearth of at the moment. I mean, not just East Cambs, Fenland, you know, villages throughout the county, which are ill-served. I do feel that in the way moving forward, when we talk about a reset, we need to start off with some strategic core values. If somebody lives in a village of a certain size, there must be a way for them to get on public transport to a hospital and to the local doctors network. And that lack of a strategic core vision in the past, or the inability to force one through under the old system, really hampered the public sector, public transport network of the future. And I admire the Cam Metro, because when that comes online, the actual cost of getting on and off an autonomous vehicle will be radically lower than a manned vehicle, radically lower. And I look forward to the day that we have autonomous vehicles driving in and out of our communities, where we can almost treat a bus as a taxi service at a quarter of the cost. So I see some great things in the future, and I think this is a step in the right direction to put the transport functions and the powers in one place, and to have the powers that go with it. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Councillor Count. I think you're absolutely right. It is an ambition working towards franchising, but we will weigh up the responsibilities. What I would say is that the reason why I'm very keen on the franchising model is because alongside Cam Metro, we could have a bus service that complements Cam Metro rather than fights it and tries to mimic what it's trying to achieve. And that's imperative. If you want to have a linked up, complete public transport system, franchising, I think, is the key to do that. And we need to make sure our buses complement Cam Metro and vice versa. I think we're looking 5-10 years ahead, but it's imperative that we must do that now. There are no further comments. We have a proposer, Councillor Count, and a seconder, Councillor Holditch. I haven't had anybody speak against this, so if somebody wants to wave at me frantically, we will see this through as a unanimous vote, and I thank you very much, members, for that. We have already mentioned that we will be, we've withdrawn the CAM update, and we've given the reasons for that previously, so we will take that to the March board, and we will move on to item 3.2, which is the Market Towns Programme Investment Prospectus, third tranche of recommended projects. This report contains 2 appendices which are exempt from publication under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, in that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any person, including the authority holding that information. If any members of the board wish to discuss the information contained in these appendices, we would need to consider whether to go into private session. Does any member want to discuss the exempt appendices? I'm seeing shaking heads. In that case, we will defer. In that case, we will move on to Domenico Carrillo, who is our business programs manager, and he will introduce the report. Domenico.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, board. This item is a continuation of the Market Towns programme and is seeking the approval from the board of the third tranche of projects received under the Market Towns investment prospectus. This, under which the combined authority is providing £13.1 million of capital investment to support the growth and regeneration of our key towns. Proposals have been invited to support delivery and mobilisation of each master plan, but also to focus on supporting our towns to recover from COVID. A period over the next 3 to 6 months in which town centres will need real support to survive and rebound from the impacts of COVID. This has been the focus of this latest round of project proposals put before the board. Just in terms of some background, to date, the combined authority have approved 15 projects in total, awarding just over £4.8 million in grant funding. This has brought in an additional £3.8 million of partner match funding. Today, the board is asked to approve a further 22 projects received under the programme, totaling a total of just over 4.1 million of grant funding, and these projects bringing in an additional 7.2 million of partner match investment. All these projects have been independently appraised and the assessment reports have been included as appendices to the report. In the interest of time, I won't go through each project in turn, but this tranche of projects includes 14 proposals from Huntingdonshire, 6 from Fenland, and 2 from East Cambridgeshire. All 22 projects are recommended for approval. For the board's information, the next tranche of projects are expected for the Combined Authority Board in March, with the aim to get all market towns funded fully allocated by July. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members. Councillor Nish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as you might expect, specifically from Huntingdon District Council on this one, we really welcome this capital money that's been made by the Combined Authority. It's a really exciting number of programmes we've put forward and the council is really pleased that all our bids have been past the independent assessors threshold. So that's really pleasing on that one. This investment will also further support our town centres in this particularly difficult time. And the council has also put in a reserve list, as you're probably aware, of list of projects should there be any other money left, which just shows the ambition we have to support our high streets. The allocation also, as you can see in one of your tables there, builds on the successful Future High Streets bid for St Neots, which we're particularly pleased for, which was obviously announced just prior to Christmas by MHCLG. And the council will also put in for further bids in the longer term for the master planning for St Ives, Huntingdon and Ramsey. So I really do welcome this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Nish, and we look forward, obviously, to all of them coming forward. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to reflect on the success of this programme. It's been a long while since those people that live in the towns can remember any sort of attention paid to them sort of at the expense of the cities that always seem to attract government funding. We're always at the front of the queue in this way. And so going back to the original programme where it was drawn up and it was saying, look, the towns cannot be ignored in this way. There's economic growth available there. They just need to be supported. And then you put out the call to ask for best ideas and how to use this. And, they did come forward in the droves. But realistically, the only reason I've put my hand up is to take my county council leader hat off and talk about March, the town where I live, because it's on that list. It's a fantastic project for March Town, and it's one of the most successful. There's only over £6.5 million of funding and direct funding, and another £2 million almost in indirect, £8.5 million in tomorrow. It's going to transform the town where I live completely, and it will be a great result to see this come to fruition. So apart from my county council leader's hat on, I'm just thankful that as a representative of March Town, the advantages that this programme has given that town.
Thank you very much. Councillor Herbert.
Adding support and just a brief comment and suggestion. The challenges faced by town centres and city centres are bigger than they've ever been. Online versus retail, the completely, obviously, different form of challenge in terms of retail and usage. I just think that we could, I would hope, James, do some combined work about how to rejuvenate our towns and city work in really just thinking about, well, how will it be different in 2022? And the whole nature of the land use is changing. We just have to try and look at building on these excellent projects, but also just create some energy locally, because they are the hubs, they are vital, but and there are lots of businesses that are struggling to continue. But I just think that we've just got to think differently about how we're going to operate our towns and city centres.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as you're aware, Councillor Herbert, we've been working with not just Cambridge City Council, but Peterborough City Council, and with the district towns as well, to try and make sure that part of this response is COVID related, because clearly there's still going to be a need for people to congregate. People will want to visit cities and towns, and they want to be entertained there. It's just their entertainment may not be in shopping nowadays, it might be in other areas. And yes, this is our market town strategy, and investment, and I thank very much Councillor Bailey, Councillor Nish and Councillor Bowden for the work that they have done in their councils to support this scheme. But this is very much about what we can do in the short and the long term to transform our market towns. But also, Councillor Herbert, we've invested over £700,000 into the city centre in Cambridge, which will see pedestrianisation and cafe culture brought into the Peace Hill area, which I think is very exciting. Similarly, I think we've invested around 800,000 into the Peterborough city centre for the Cathedral Square area to have the same kind of seating and to allow people to have that different kind of experience from visiting our cities. And I think that that's something that will stand in great stead over the course of the summer, as we hope this vaccine kicks in and people are able to get out and visit and spend their money in our economy again, and how exciting that thought is. So, but I think the challenge is there, and I think it's right, Councillor Herbert, that we don't drop the ball on this, and we continue to put investment into our towns and our cities and into the centres of them. And we will continue, going back to the early point you made, to lobby government where we can to get the funding in, as we have done with March, and of course the £25 million funding that came into Peterborough as well earlier on last year. Councillor Smith, I hope you're going to mention that that we haven't done enough in South Cambs.
So what I was going to say is that obviously not as part of this scheme, but thinking ahead to the recovery, I think we have to realise that, it's not all about towns. And obviously, we have towns in our region which are very impoverished, for which investment is long overdue. But thinking ahead, we also have village centres, and those village centres have actually been the saviour for those of us living in rural communities during the pandemic. And even though, our food shops, I think, have probably done reasonably well, because actually, they have saved the day for those of us who can't, don't feel it's safe to go to supermarkets and so on. Our rural pubs have taken an absolutely horrendous hit. So I would like the board to think about fairly soon doing some collaborative work with the rural districts and probably with the business board as well, looking at what we can do to regenerate those larger village centres, which really are going to be in deep difficulty they are in deep difficulty now. It's only going to get worse, but anything focusing particularly on pubs, I would absolutely welcome. But let's remember we've got village centres too, and they have been the areas that have really helped us through the pandemic.
Yeah, and I certainly would love to focus on pubs, Councillor Smith, and certainly go out and support them again. And I miss that very much. And I think the point is with this, and you make it very eruditely. This item, of course, is about market towns, and South Cambs doesn't have a market town. In fact, its market town is the city of Cambridge itself. However, through the business board and with Mr. Adams as chair, we have invested £55 million into the economy of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough over the course of the last year, of which £17 million of which was into the economy and businesses of South Cambridgeshire. And I've visited some of those businesses myself, right in the very heart, in particular of Shelford, Great Shelford, where businesses there have received finance. And so, I agree with you. We will continue to work to do whatever we can to support our economy and grow our economy. I can't do it on my own visiting pubs and restaurants. I try manfully, but I'm sure that we will all be looking forward to getting back out and doing that over the course of the summer. And I look to the government actually at the success of Eat Out to Help Out last August, and I would hope very much that there are similar schemes from central government this summer, because the likelihood of us going abroad is limited. So supporting our local economies, I think, is absolutely something we should be doing. I have no further speakers. I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Nish. Thank you very much. And I'll go to the vote, please. So Mr. Adams.
Support.
Councillor Bailey.
Support.
Councillor Bowden.
Support.
Councillor Count.
Support.
Councillor Herbert.
Support.
Councillor Holditch.
Support.
Councillor Nish.
Support.
And Councillor Smith.
Support.
Thank you very much. That's unanimous. And we move on to item 3.3, which is the business growth service. And Alan Downton, interim programme manager, will introduce the report. Alan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members. The directors of the Peterborough and Cambridgeshire Business Growth Company met on the 4th of December. This paper is to gain the combined authority's approval for a number of the growth company's board resolutions and decisions to enable the company to function and to deliver the business growth service. These are items A to D under recommendations. Item E, which is the revised shareholder agreement. The original shareholder agreement was approved by the CA board back in July 2019. It was intended for a structure of CPCA companies in which Angle Holdings Limited would be the sole shareholder in various subsidiaries. The revised shareholder agreement reflects the new structure in which Angle Holdings Limited is initially the sole shareholder in GrowthCo, but the GrowthCo then issues further shares which are purchased by the CPCA, at which point Angle Holdings Limited would own only one £1 share in the growth company, and the CPCA would own 5.4 million. The revised shareholder agreement deals with the process for the issue of the subscription shares. The paper also serves to update the board on the progress with the recruitment of the independent chair for the Peterborough and Cambridgeshire Business Growth Company Limited. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Herbert.
I don't know what people outside of the combined authority make of this report, but I can't understand what it's all about. It talks about £5.4 million worth of funding, and it talks about the need to have a company to manage it. I'd like to have a bit more from Mr. Downton about what is it this 5.4 million is for, because the report has got nothing about that. And just an indication of what percentage of the costs, what percentage of the overall 5.4 million will be swallowed in the overhead of setting up this company. I just really like to understand what's it for and what's it going to cost.
Councillor Herbert, could I hand you over to John T. Hill, please?
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Councillor Herbert. Yes, the report should have made it clearer around the context of the growth company, that the growth company was a special purpose vehicle created in order to fund the business growth service, which is just about to start its contract, and members unanimously agreed in the FBC last year to push it forward. The 5.4 million was an LGF, a local growth fund investment from the business board in the company. That investment of capital LGF as an equity investment into the special purpose vehicle we created effectively converted the capital into revenue. And of course, our business growth service is a revenue service in terms of paying for advisors to help companies grow and advisors to attract companies to our area. So that is what the funding 5.4 million is for. In terms of the percentage of the total amount of money that goes into the business growth service, of which the 5.4 million is only part, in total there's a £26 million budget for this wider service. The amount of money being taken up of that 26 million by running the company, the special purpose vehicle, to do this is only something in the region of 800k over 3 years. But I will confirm that number because it's not an accurate number as a result of this meeting.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I just think, Mayor, that one of the things that gets lost sometimes in the way, and it's easy for me as an ex-local government officer to be poacher turned gamekeeper, but one of the things that gets lost is actually what this is for. And I know that behind that there are some really good projects, and that there's the need to remodel those given the unemployment that we've got, the under 25s that can't find jobs, that risk being out of work for a period of time, and the need to really focus this on the hard edge of the challenge and troubles that a lot of people have got at the moment in our county. So, yeah, if we could be clearer and share what the core objectives are, and also explain how we're focusing them on the current emergency, which in terms of economic recovery is tough.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the question, Councillor Herbert, because Mr. Hill had to hold my hand and lead me through this very, very carefully, because I was struggling to understand myself in the same way that you were, because it is a bit local government speak underneath it. But I assure you it is a vehicle to bring the financing necessary to do exactly what you have said, which is to invest into the economy of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and make sure that the impact of the negative impact that we've seen through COVID is dealt with as appropriately as possible, and also the long-term opportunities for this county are as strong as they were 12 months ago. I don't see any further comments. I'm happy to propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Mayor.
Councillor Bowden. Mr. Adams was close, but not quite quick enough. I haven't heard anybody speak against, so unless somebody frantically waves, we will take this as another unanimous vote. So thank you very much, members. Part 4, we go on to recommendations from the Transport Infrastructure Committee, and we have Anna Graham, Transport Programme Manager, to talk us through the A16 Norwood improvements.
Just quickly for my nervous disposition on procedure. Just to be clear, members, this is a matter that requires special voting. It wasn't clear. Yeah, over to you, Anna.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the purpose of this paper is to seek approval for the drawdown of £630,000 from the medium-term financial plan to produce the outline business case for the A16 Norwood improvements. The Peterborough local plan identifies the need to deliver 19,440 new homes by 2036. The Norwood site and the adjacent Paston Reserve urban extension are expected to provide a total of 2,945 dwellings. The SOBC sets out the case for transport improvements in the A16 Norwood area. The SOBC concludes that a package of interventions is needed to improve congestion, safety and enable growth in the area. The package includes the closure of the Newborough Road access onto the A47, dualling of the A16 between the A16-A47 Welland Road roundabout and the Norwood development access, signalisation of the A16 A47 Welland Road roundabout on the A16 southbound approach, a 50-metre flare added to the A47 westbound approach to provide additional capacity for left turning traffic to Welland Road, and a dedicated left turn lane from the A47 eastbound to the A16 northbound. This package of work will be further developed at OBC. The SOBC reports that the package has a benefit cost ratio of 3.2, which demonstrates high value for money. The financial case estimates the construction cost of approximately £6.5 million, but there'll be further work will be undertaken to refine the cost estimating through the business case stages. The next stage of the project will be for the OBC to be undertaken to develop the recommended option further. This phase will also include a number of surveys and consultation with the public to ensure that the full business case scope is better defined. The OBC is expected to start in April and take approximately a year to complete. I commend this report to the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Comments, please. Councillor Holditch.
Yes, yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, you'll probably remember it's nearly 12 months ago since I asked you to come to Peterborough with your officers and discuss this, because it unlocks about 2.2 thousand houses. Currently, the landowner is splitting about 5, and we could only get a very small proportion of those houses in off Newborough Road. So that wasn't going to work. You know, it really does something. I think it's had planning permission for the best part of 10 years. And this really does allow the site to be unlocked and unlocked safely, and the traffic to enter and egress from the site. So I'd like to thank the Combined Authority for that, because we do really need to get on with it. There's big demand for houses still in Peterborough, and I think the more houses we can get onto the market, it controls the costs as well. So thank you for that. We still have to resolve between us, and I think we will, the affordable housing issue on there, because there isn't enough affordable housing in it. But if we can get it all opened up, the infrastructure opened up, I'm sure that will resolve itself as well. Thank you.
I'm sure we can, Councillor Hodditch. It's good to help, and I'm sure that we can deliver some £100,000 homes on that site as well, as a bonus for the people of Peterborough.
Indeed.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. So, so whilst noting that you know, Councillor Holditch feels that reducing congestion provides sufficient benefits to the climate, it will be good moving forward to see how this scheme fits in with an overall sustainable travel strategy. Because at the end of the day, you know, reducing congestion is one thing, but actually people not getting in their cars is another thing altogether. So I hope this does fit in with the overall sustainable travel strategy for Peterborough, and it'd be interesting for us to see that work as the OBC delivers.
Yes, of course, and as you're aware, Councillor Smith, if you're going to bring forward large sites, volume housing sites such as this, 2,200 homes, I'll mention the Bourne Airfield site. You know that there has to be a transport solution that opens up these sites, but also the ambition beyond that is clearly to make sure that there are links into Peterborough's outstanding cycle route network, which is as good as anywhere in the country. And of course, so that these two things will work in tandem, of course, and work appropriately.
Mr. Mayor, could I just comment on that? I think that was an awful misinterpretation of what I said. I said not all road schemes are against the green agenda, because if you're in congestion, then sitting vehicles are worse for air pollution than they are if they're moving. And this is a roadway and shouldn't be linked to it to open up the houses that we need, which will be sustainable houses to a higher U value. So, you know, you can't have one without the other. You must have some roads to get into the site.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so I'm happy to propose this recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, please.
Councillor Holditch, of course, and I'll ask each voting member of the board in turn. Mr. Adams.
Support.
Councillor Bailey.
Support.
Bowden. Councillor Count.
Support.
Councillor Herbert.
Support.
Councillor Nish.
Fully support.
And Councillor Smith.
Support.
Okay, so again, that's unanimous. We move on to item 4.2, which some may see as distant, but doesn't affect us, as the London Luton Airport arrivals consultation. Tim Bellamy, tell us why this affects Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, board members. Hopefully you can all hear me, and good afternoon. This paper is to discuss the National Air Traffic Services consultation into the proposed changes to the flight arrival paths and stacking arrangement for London Luton Airport. The closing date for the consultation is the 5th of February, and members are asked to discuss a potential response from the authority, with delegation sought for the Director of Delivery and Strategy in consultation with the Chair of the Transport Infrastructure Committee to respond to consultation. London Luton Airport and NATS are considering consider that if air traffic returns to pre-pandemic growth trajectories, flight paths and stacking areas will be overcrowded and delays will result. NATS and London Luton Airport have developed two options. Both of these options require airplanes to circle at or above 8,000 feet above parts of Huntingdonshire and South Cambridgeshire. The difference between the two options is that the route from the holding stack to the landing is the final landing path, so it's not to do with the stacking configuration above Huntingdonshire and South Cambridgeshire. Moving on to the areas of possible concern, the noise pollution. The airspace consultation document notes that the typical noise that an observer on the ground might expect to experience from a reviving aircraft between 7,000 and 8,000 feet will be around 59 to 57 decibels for the aircraft. This is equivalent to a normal conversation and a dishwasher. In relation to air pollution, this is noted that the airspace consultation document outlines that on average the arrival to London Luton Airport in 2022 is expected to increase fuel use by around 89 kilograms and emitting to 285 kilograms more CO2 emissions. Following the consultation, NAT and London Luton Airport expect to submit a formal airspace change proposal to the Civil Aviation Authority in June 2021. And if this is approved, it is a plan that the suggested changes will not be implemented before February 2022. I commend the papers to the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Of course, South Cambs was mentioned, so your hand was up, and understandably so.
So thank you very much. So actually, I should probably declare an interest in this because there will be significant impact here over the village that I live in and over my house, which I'm sitting in. So I have actually written jointly both with my county councillor and a neighbouring councillor in Bedfordshire to the local MPs on this matter. So the arguments that I would like this authority to think about putting is that by stacking aircraft over quiet countryside, we're talking about very, very significant numbers of aircraft here. And even at sort of 59, 60 decibels, that there will be impact. People will hear that if it's over quiet countryside. And the very nature of the size of the stack and the projected increase in aircraft numbers will mean it will be continuous. It won't be every now and then. This will be all the time. And this will begin to really negatively impact on people's quality of life. So aircraft have to stack somewhere. So the obvious place to stack aircraft is over noisy areas. So that means over there's no reason why the descent to Luton can't follow the path of the A1, which is noisy, and you don't have people sitting out in their deck chairs beside the A1, but also over more urban areas where there is considerably more ambient noise, and therefore the acoustic impact of these aircraft will not be so apparent. So this is obviously quite a localized matter, but I think I really, really object very strongly to them.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Aircraft, which will be descending
coming up at 1:30.
well under 9,000 metres over South Cambridgeshire.
Yes, and I fully share your concerns, Councillor Smith. Councillor Nish probably has a similar point, I would imagine.
Thank you. Yes, I mean we've discussed this at quite length with district as well, and we are responding as I'm sure. South Cambs are as well, and a lot of parishes, and there is a lot of concern about lack of some information from NATS on it of actually what it does mean, what doesn't mean. I mean, a couple of things. It's amazing how much you learn sometimes the more you dig into this, or fly high above it, should I say? In that we've also got to bear in mind one of the things which was brought to our attention literally this earlier on this week was it's above sea level as well. So the stacking is above sea level. So just bear in mind in that I know most of us are not far above sea level in reality. And sorry, Chris, in Fenland a bit below maybe, but bear in mind that that 8,000 feet is actually lower than 8,000 feet above some of the higher ground areas. So what we suggested is actually, if you are looking at it, needs to be at least 9,000 feet to get those dB signals correct. So just from a Huntingdonshire's perspective, we are concerned. A lot of residents are concerned. It's not particularly clear. Again, I'll reiterate from a sound perspective, and we think that potentially, I mean, it's all difficult because they've got to stack somewhere. We understand that there is got a location, but we don't think they've given a really clear indication as to what those alternatives could be. They've just come back and saying it's here, and that's it, not looking at all the other alternatives.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point, and we'll take that on board, Councillor Nish. I just, whilst in agreement with Councillor Smith, I just want to one element of caution in that the A1 goes through significant parts of Huntingdonshire, of course, up to Peterborough, and stacking over the A1 may be also not necessarily the best option for Cambridgeshire as a whole. So I know that, of course, where Councillor Smith is, the A1 is considerably west of Cambridgeshire, but that's not the case as we move further up. So I think we need to be balanced in our concern, but equally, I think the points that you've both made are very valid. There are no further comments, so I'm happy to propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Smith, and I expect, and I don't see anybody suggesting not, that we will unanimously support this, so we move on with that unanimous vote to item 4.3, GCP consultations, Waterbridge to Cambridge Eastern access, and we have a question on this from Overview and Scrutiny. Councillor Dupre.
Good morning again. Before I ask this question, I'd like to observe that the question that we asked at 3.1 on the CAM update has not been taken. Our question was, why has the CAM update item been withdrawn? And I wasn't given an answer to that. Could we deal with that?
Dupre, because we had already had the discussion and explained why it had been withdrawn within the meeting. So that was why there was no need for me to take that question at that particular time. But I can reiterate to you the reason is because we want to bring more information back to the board in March, as was discussed at some length with Councillor Herbert and others in a previous item on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I would reiterate that the way in which the Overview and Scrutiny operates is that we receive back the questions and the answers from this meeting to our next meeting, and it would be
equally, Councillor Dupre, the item had already been deferred, so there was no need for me to take that question. Perhaps if we could have the question on this item, please.
So my point is that for our records, it would be helpful to have an answer, and I need to assert the right of Overview and Scrutiny to ask questions and to receive answers. I move on to the question on 4.3, which is, what is the combined authority's position on an alternative public transport mode for travel between Waterbeach and Cambridge? This has previously formed part of the authority's proposals for the CAM. Is this still the case?
Yeah, so the proposed combined authority position is on the issues raised in the GCP's consultation on the Waterbeach to Cambridge scheme is set out in the papers before the board. That project forms overall part of CAM network. In addition to the development of the CAM scheme, and following the representations made both by me and the combined authority, Network Rail has completed upgrade works to extend platforms at Waterbeach and Littleport. As a result, the infrastructure between Cambridge and Kings Lynn can now support 8 carriage train formations calling at all intermediate stations. This is a significant boost to space and seats on train services. With the introduction of the December timetable, this has meant that following the completion of the work, there are now half-hour services at Waterbeach that will be a significant improvement for passengers using the station. And I just want the current plans of the GCP that I've just asked them to look at, really, Councillor Bray, are that they would take a busway from Cambridge North Station, which is just over a mile from Waterbeach, around Waterbeach and into Waterbeach Station. And the question really is, at this moment in time, is that the best way to spend the money? Would the money be better spent on upgrading the railway stations that are there? And also with the consideration of the new town that's being built at Waterbeach Barracks, would the route for the potential CAM Metro, where the busway would eventually become CAM Metro, be better if it went alongside the A10 with regard to the upgrade of the A10 that we're looking at, and Councillor Bailey's suggestion that the A10 CAM Metro may go all the way to Ely. Would it be better to create a corridor alongside the A10? I'm just putting suggestions really to the GCP to consider at this particular time. Tim Bellamy will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor, and again, thank you, board members. So this paper is to discuss the Greater Cambridge Partnership 2 consultation. These officially closed in late December with the Waterbeach to Cambridge and Eastern Access consultations. The combined authority agreed an extension with the GCP to allow for discussion at the Transport and Infrastructure Committee and this board. The Transport Infrastructure Committee recommended to submit the responses outlined in this paper and the appendices on the agreement of board to GCP. In relation to the Waterbeach consultation, the main concerns that were raised included the recent improvement to the rail network and services outlined previously by the Mayor in relation to the answer to the OBE scrutiny. It is essential to understand how this scheme would complement these improvements and not provide a duplication of effort and services. To deliver a truly integrated network for the residents of Cambridgeshire, it is important to provide a network to meet their needs through a dedicated, sustainable and integrated network. The scheme supports and enhances environmental sustainability, including the delivery of biodiversity net gained. The Waterbeach to Cambridge project needs to be integrated again into the overarching transport network and offer a viable, sustainable alternative to the private car. The scheme is essential as the scheme is developed. Due consideration is given to the requirements of CAM and the A10 improvement. With that in mind, it is important that consideration is given to the Milton Interchange Junction, ensure that the scheme does not adversely impact the operation capacity or flow of this interchange. In relation to the Eastern Access, a summary of the main concerns were ensuring that the components of the Eastern Access scheme are integrated into planned and delivered to be delivered in this area of the city, thereby decreasing the dependency on the private car to and from any planned development. The scheme must complement the wider CAM project, especially the tunnelling section of the CAM. And it's important that the Eastern Access scheme does not adversely impact on the operation of the Fern Ditton and the Milton Interchange Junction and seek to improve them wherever possible. I commend this paper to the board with a recommendation to submit the response outlined in the paper to the GCP as the authority's formal response.
Thank you very much. Councillor Herbert.
Thanks. And it's important that we work in partnership on this. But I'm still just a little bit mystified about the fact that the response, particularly on the Waterbeach route, doesn't, to me, get the big picture. So big picture one is that the A10 assessment, which I think was done by Mott MacDonald again, who are now featuring in working on the CAM, so that might join things up. But the big picture is that assessment, the scoring of the cost-benefit ratio, said that public transport improvements in this zone were vital and came way ahead in terms of scoring, even than the junctions, and particularly ahead of the expansion of the A10. And the reason is that the junction of the A10 and the A14 will continue to be a disaster zone until there is real public investment. And we can't guarantee that, James, that we'll receive that. So this isn't just about Waterbeach to Cambridge. This is about all of the traffic that comes down and can get onto public transport. So if I'm living in an isolated part of Fenland or East Cambridgeshire and I want to see CAM Metro extend all the way, I'm just not understanding that this response really grasps the issue. So this route is in the local transport plan. This route is addressing the supplementary guidance that was added to that. This route puts public transport first, not just for Waterbeach, but to enable people to transition, not just to go to Cambridge, but to go in the future west when we get east-west rail, to go down to London. I just think that there is a narrowness about the response. I'm just raising this as a view. We will obviously happily consider any views that are put into this. And there will, I believe, be significant benefits subject to getting the final detail in Waterbeach right for Waterbeach too. So we're keen to continue to discuss this. It is a partnership. And I note that when I look at the Mott MacDonald press release about how wonderful their work will be about innovative delivery, that they also reference this route as being a fundamental route. So I would like us to move the discussion on and enable more people to be able to transition to public transport. And I think even though this route is not a million miles long, I think it will be hugely valuable.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Herbert. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'm really confused about this. Could I ask, please, for a transcript of what Tim read? Because the sound quality was really bad, and you spoke terribly fast, Tim. So it was really difficult to give proper attention to what you were saying to us. So I'd appreciate a transcript of that. So, my understanding is that the GCP route had previously been accepted by the Combined Authority as phase 1 of a section of CAM. And as Lewis has mentioned, it's actually part of the published local transport plan and part of the CAM sub-strategy. So I'm really confused about what's going on here. And I'm really worried that suddenly it looks as if there's a move to redirect money towards station improvements.
No,
I really appreciate some clarity on that, please.
Yeah, I think, please don't misunderstand this. First of all, this is the first time that the Combined Authority had a chance to talk on this consultation. It's the first time I've been certainly asked about it. And I want to get some clarity on this really to both you and Lewis. First of all, Lewis, you mentioned about the junction of the A10 and the A14. Of course, the GCP had in their budget £50 million to solve that problem and decided not to do that. So, there is an issue that the Combined Authority is going to have to pick up that slack. But also, what we have in place here is a busway that goes from Waterbeach Railway Station to Cambridge North Railway Station. The capacity on the Cambridge on that line has just been doubled, as is mentioned in this report, and it's just over a mile. Why anybody would get on a busway to take them the same journey, I can't see any understanding of that. I can't figure it out at all. So there's been a change here to start with. Secondly, if we are going to have a joined up system, there's no way CAM Metro would go from Waterbeach Railway Station. It just wouldn't make no sense whatsoever. You wouldn't go into the village and then come out again when there's already a link in Cambridge North to the railway in any case. So that's the second thing. Thirdly, Councillor Smith, when it comes to the railway budget, you will know, because it's your patch, as part of the planning permission for the second phase of Waterbeach Barracks, the developer has to deliver a railway station. So that finance is in there. What I'm saying is, if the GCP delivered that railway station now, or upgraded the railway station that's in existence, then that money could come back into the GCP from the developer, and the GCP would not lose out on any finance whatsoever. But it's just a matter of using the money more sensibly, more quickly, rather than now putting in a busway from one railway station to another. That's purely the point here. I just think it just needs a little bit of analysis and a little bit of conversation. But the Combined Authority can only make representation of the GCP. The GCP, of course, is its own body and does what it wants to do. Councillor Herbert.
And I just we have an offline meeting on this, including Councillor Smith and possibly Councillor Count, because some of this goes back a few years. I've lost a lot of hair over the last few years. It's not been down to the GCP, but it's the length of time that some of the projects take. Now, I know from the assessment which Councillor Count and others contributed to back in 2015, that we never seriously looked at pouring £50 million into the roundabout because fundamentally we know that mode shift for a city is the way, particularly for the last 3 miles. So let's have a discussion, James. Let's be clear. We have been working to the local transport plan on a four-arm approach of the out of Cambridge routes, and it would be really useful to reconfirm and to challenge that assumption, particularly looking at this section.
More than happy to chat online, offline, or at any time, Councillor Herbert. Councillor Count.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for bringing me in. So I'm not the representative on the GCP, so I think you can, although I was there in the early conversations quite a number of years ago, I think you can imagine that I'm not as up to date as I would like to be when a discussion like this raises its head. So as soon as I became aware of the paperwork and the direction of travel, I thought it was best that I did get myself fully involved and really understand this, because they seem like reasonable questions to me. You know, the world changes as we move along. Some of these projects, Lewis is completely right, Councillor Herbert's completely right. Some of these projects take years to deliver, and sometimes the starting point by the time of delivery has changed and you may not wish to be there anymore. And sometimes you have to say, we cannot keep swapping and changing because it would take another 3, 4, 5 years. But on other occasions, you must say the world has changed and we need to change direction with that world. And I think a pertinent point that you've raised, James, is the increased capacity of the train station. But much more than that, as like other routes, I don't like to see multiple modes of transport tracking each other in an identical way, because it doesn't really lead to options. So running a CAM Metro along a road for the entire length, or running along a train railway thing for the entire length, doesn't seem to make sense to me. What you need is touch points so that you can change your mode of travel, and then you have alternatives at a latter point or earlier point in your journey, which I think is the question that's being raised here. So I for one, look forward to the answers and think they need to be answered. And I did straight away follow up with a request to the Combined Authority and the GCP to get some kind of a briefing, members and officer involvement. And I can confirm I've already had an answer that the officer groups, the Combined Authority and GCP officers, is being arranged for next week. Kim is copied in, and we'll have this discussion on that agenda. And then as the officers come to some either agreed position or in a position that isn't disagreed, we can take that to the members, yourself, Mayor, Councillor Bridget Smith, Lewis Herbert, myself, or Chair of GPC, to examine what the differences of opinions are. So I've already activated that. I look forward to examining this in more detail. And as far as I'm concerned, we should move forward today, vote in favour of this request for that question to be answered, and move forward today.
Okay, thank you very much. There are no other speakers. I'm proposing from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? I've got Councillor Count and Councillor Holditch fighting it out, so we'll go for Councillor Count. I will go to the vote because there has been some discussion. Mr. Adams.
Support.
Councillor Bailey.
Support.
Councillor Bowden.
Support.
Councillor Count.
Support.
Councillor Herbert.
Abstained. I look forward to a meeting.
Councillor Holditch.
Support.
Councillor Nish.
Support.
And Councillor Smith.
And abstains. I don't really understand what I'm being asked to support, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's a majority decision, and we move on to the next item, which is an additional recommendation from Transport and Infrastructure Committee to consider proposing an amendment to the committee's terms of reference. I exercise my discretion as chair to accept this report after the agenda had been published. We have a question on this report from Councillor du Preez over in scrutiny. Councillor du Preez.
The question from the committee is, could the board provide some clarity around the decision-making structure that will result from the proposals set out to change the remit of Transport and Infrastructure Committee?
Sure. So the effect of the proposed amendment to the terms of reference of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee would be to provide a formal mechanism for the Transport and Infrastructure Committee on behalf of the Combined Authority as local transport authority to support the Mayor in his role as a non-voting member of the GCP Executive Board. This would in turn contribute to the decision-making of the GCP Executive Board on matters relating to the Cambridgeshire Autonomous Metro Scheme. The mechanism would be for the committee to provide the Mayor with representations on CAM matters being considered by the GCP. Final decision-making on GCP CAM projects would remain with the GCP Executive Board, subject to any public inquiry process necessary to secure the necessary consents for an individual scheme. The intention is to ensure that the Transport and Infrastructure Committee is fully briefed on pending GCP CAM decision-making and can support the Mayor by formulating decisions by formulating representations to the GCP on behalf of the CPCA as local transport authority. The decision-making structure would be the GCP would publish its agendas for joint assembly and executive board meetings in the normal way. Any reports relating to the CAM scheme would be brought to a meeting of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. The relevant GCP officers would be invited to present the reports and respond to any queries from the committee. The committee would formulate any representations on those reports, and they would be shared with the GCP by the Mayor. The GCP executive boards would then have those representations available to it when it made its decisions on CAM matters. So this is all about trying to get a proper process and governance around joint working between the GCP and the Combined Authority. And I will let the monitoring officer introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, the answer to the question is actually really set out, I think, the main contents of this. This is seeking an authorisation for myself to make amendments to the Constitution to expand the remit of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee in the way described. As the local transport authority, the idea is that it contributes to commentary which in an informed way, which is why it's envisaged that GCP would be invited to come and speak to the committee, but to contribute in an informed way through the Mayor to those GCP meetings. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Herbert is already has his hand up, so Councillor Herbert.
So the public are shortly going to be asked to vote in 4 different sets of local elections, and one of their questions will be, why are there so many of these buggers? Because we've got all of these different bodies. Now, I'm all for GCP officers coming to the Transport Committee and for greater liaison, but I have to say that, first of all, I've had no knowledge of this, and I don't think the GCP officers have had any input into this. I just want to reduce friction, and we've got you, James, on the board as an observer, and we are working far better, I believe, and that's the intention. I just worry, including just the complexity of what you had to read out, is this overkill, and I just would prefer if we just if we were able to evidence why this extra sort of loop in the decision and consultation circuit is actually going to add stuff. So I'm just an agnostic on this, and I can't personally, from reading this and hearing from the explanation, understand what it adds. But if you want to vote it through, we'll work whatever system will help us work jointly.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis, I don't think this is, it's not anything untoward. It's just a matter of, if we're delivering a one CAM system, if we're delivering a metro route that involves the whole of Cambridgeshire, that will have to have a transport solution that involves the combined authorities, the local transport authority. It's important, I believe, that the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, the combined authority, have full oversight on decisions that are being made that affect the entirety of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And that's where we are. And from that position, I can then take that informed decision or opinion onto the GCP board for the GCP board to consider. As you know, I'm not a voting member of that board, and therefore would not influence the vote of that in any other way than just through discussion. But we tried a lot of things to get genuine joint working with the GCP, and we've failed, quite frankly. And the only way I think we can really get to that position is through this kind of open discussion in public between elected individuals. There are no further comments, so I would be prepared to propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second, Mayor.
Councillor Bailey. I will go through the vote. Mr. Adams.
Support.
Councillor Bailey.
Support.
Sorry, I'm struggling with my mouse here for a second, so bear with me. We then go to Councillor Bowden.
Support.
Councillor Count.
Support.
Councillor Herbert,
Abstain.
Councillor Holditch,
Support.
Councillor Nish,
Support.
and Councillor Smith.
Same.
Okay, so again, that's a majority decision. And we move on to part 5, which is 5.1 is the Community Land Trust business case. And we now turn to a recommendation from the Housing and Communities Committee, chaired by Councillor Bowden. We are now going to introduce Emma Grimmer, Director of Corporate and Commercial Services at East Cambridgeshire District Council, to introduce the report. Emma Mulvaney is also available to offer technical advice. Emma Grimmer.
Thank you, Mayor. My colleague Emily Mulvaney will assist with any technical questions that you have, as you've already alluded to. The item before you recommends that the board approve the Community Land Trust business case, which has been provided at Appendix 1. And the business case identifies the support that the combined authority is providing to the local communities already and what it can do more of to deliver community-led development across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Once we've established more CLTs across the area, we'll be in a better position to understand what other interventions we can put in place to scale up more CLT development across the area. As you've already said, the item was considered by the Housing and Communities Committee in early January. There were a few changes required by the Housing and Communities Committee, which have been reflected in Appendix 1 tracked for ease of reference. And I'm happy to take any questions now.
Okay, members, any questions? No? Okay, fantastic. So the report is so comprehensive, the members are quite happy to take it as is. So I assume, Councillor Bowden, that you are proposing. And the seconder, please.
I would like to second, and in seconding, if I could just say a few words, because obviously naturally coming from East Cambridgeshire, I'm a big supporter of community land trusts and this paper. We've been championing community land trusts for some considerable time now in East Cambridgeshire. And of course, community-led development has preferential treatment in our local plan process. And I just really wanted to give you a little story from the ground. Hadnham Community Land Trust handed the keys over to their first 2 properties that they took possession of to tenants on Friday last week. And I just want to, massively offer them my congratulations on reaching this milestone. Community Land Trust trustees give their time freely. It's not a task to be taken lightly by any means. It's not easy, but they've done it because they believe in what this gives to their community, and they've done a fantastic job and put in a huge amount of work to bring this development forward. And they've done it despite COVID as well. And a further 3 properties are following in February. Ultimately, Hadnham, which is not a huge village, will own 17 of the 54 properties on the development, and they'll be let to local people. And 2 further properties are going to be available for shared ownership alongside the Community Land Trust. And the CLT in Hadnham is providing truly affordable housing. The other examples in Streatham and other examples in East Cambridgeshire are significantly undercutting the rental values of social rent and the percentages, and very significantly below market rent. And this is, of course, is going to people who are so often shut out of the local housing market. And the other thing, apologies. The other thing is that it also provides a significant income to the community in perpetuity, which can be used to support other community projects. Sorry. And I just wanted to say as well that East Cambs Trading Company has been very pleased to be involved in the implementation of this in Hadnham. And we want to thank the Combined Authority for its support in facilitating this development through the loans that it put forward. So really just congratulations to the new tenants on their moving in day last week.
I think it's a really good points, Councillor Bailey. The other thing I'd just like to mention here, that the Streatham and Wilburton Community Land Trust gave every single one of its tenants a month's holiday from its rent in December. So the ability of these trusts to act on behalf of those people who are living in them, and the levels of rent that they're paying, as has been mentioned, is significantly below that of housing associations, and clearly offers a real alternative. And there's no reason why every single village in East Cambridgeshire, in Cambridgeshire as a whole, couldn't have one of these schemes. They are exceptional, and they bring exceptional opportunities for young people to live in the villages where their family are from. And why wouldn't you want to do that if you have the opportunity? This has been proposed by Chris Bowden. It's been seconded by Anna Bailey. I haven't seen anybody waving at me that they vehemently disagree with this. So unless I see a wave now, I will say that it's a unanimous vote again. So thank you very much, members. And I'm very pleased to say, with 20 minutes left before councillors Count and Holditch are going to run from the nest, we find Mr. Adams and his team in the unusual position of being able to deliver their reports to the whole of the committee. So we move on to item 6.1, which is local growth fund, programme management, etc. And we will bring in Mr. Adams.
Yeah, thank you, James. I'd like to defer the presentation of the individual reports, all of which are fairly straightforward, to the respective officers that have done the work, and all credit to them. I would just like to remind the board that these have been debated at length in the business board, and the purpose of bringing them here is purely as the accountable body for final approval. Nevertheless, very happy to take questions and debate them at length if we so wish. I would also like to share with the board the view or the comfort that all of these recommendations were unanimously supported by the business board, very enthusiastically. I don't think there are any particularly contentious issues here, so hopefully we can get through them very quickly. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Steve.
Thanks, Mayor. Good afternoon, board members. This report covers the update to the business board on the 12th of January. It covers operational updates on the local growth fund, covering financial update on the programme spend to the 1st of December, 93 million, and project spend forecast to the end of programme, 31st of March, which predicts achieving full spend. It covers the 24 projects currently in delivery, the 3 in pre-contract and 22 completed. It covers the Q2 quarterly growth deal return to MHCLG. It updates the COVID business capital grant scheme, which as at 1st of December had paid out 3.4 million to 79 companies. And we have continued paying out very strongly through December and into January, expecting to pay out all of the grants before 31st of March. Updates on the Eastern Agritech Growth Initiative, which again, activities have continued throughout December, and all of the Agritech funding has been awarded to recipients and will be drawn before the 31st of March. The report shows the LGF monitoring and evaluation that we've undertaken, which continues and is shown in Appendix 5. The board were provided with an update on the LGF recycled funding, which is shown in Appendix 6 in the business board report. And also there was an update on the Getting Building Fund, is noted in the paper, and there are other papers to this board that relate. The report also contained a recommendation for a project change request from Cambridge Medipark Limited, which are currently awarded LGF to build the biomedical multi-occupancy building on Adam Brooks. A copy of the change request was attached at Appendix 1. The reason for the change was due to delay in the planning committee being moved from December to January. This now means they are requesting to claim funds into Q1 2021. And as per advice from Cities and Local Government Unit, DPCA can use its funding flexibilities to ensure there's no impact on the Local Growth Fund programme. Also, in addition, there was a separate change request that was added to the business board agenda late. This is from the March Adult Education Centre project, And this was a request for an extension again beyond 31st of March. This one for a much shorter period, for a month. And this was due to delays around ill health of the project delivery team and COVID impact on the actual project, and a late procurement as a result. A copy of that change request is attached to Appendix 2. As per advice on the other item, it should have no impact, as CPCA can use its funding flexibilities to ensure that funding is reported as spent. Any questions on the paper?
No questions that I can see. Mr. Adams, I can commend that we're going to probably be finding support for that. So you will be proposing. Do we have a seconder for this item, please?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. So we will take that as unanimous and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 6.2, University of Peterborough. We have a question from Councillor du Preez. Councillor du Preez.
The Overview and Scrutiny Committee's question is, the plan mentions car parking provision. What weight has been given to the environmental impact of the proposals in terms of land use and carbon emissions?
Okay, so the requirement for a car park was a stipulation made by the planners at Peterborough City Council and includes 178 spaces to accommodate. Up to 250 tenants will be in the new research building, and the replacement 36 spaces allocated for the teaching building lost as a result of the research building being placed over the land allocated to them, and allowance for additional spaces to allow the currently approved on-street parking for the teaching building to move into an off-street car park. Consideration will be given to reducing the number of spaces so as to limit the use of car transport, and the feasibility of electric vehicle charging points is also being considered. In regard to the environmental impact on the land use, we have developed a landscape solution that minimises the take-up of the public space and attempts to provide a net increase in green space in comparison with the current land use. Austin, would you like to comment on this stage, or are you happy for officers to introduce the report?
No, I'm quite happy to move on in the interest of time, James.
Okay, so we'll bring forward Mahmood, who's going to talk us through. Mahmood Faruqi.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councillors. The proposal in front of you on the second phase of the university development were submitted to the Skills Committee on 11th of January for noting and subsequently discussed.
Sorry, Mahmood, could you speak up, please? I think members are having difficulty hearing you. Thank you.
Sure, my apologies. The proposal in front of you on the second phase of university development were submitted to the Skills Committee on 11th of January for noting and subsequently discussed by the Business Board on 12th of January 21. Following the discussion, the Business Board agreed unanimously to recommend the proposal to the Combined Authority Board for approval. Therefore, this paper is seeking final ratification of the proposal from the board. To clarify further, the approval is about delegated authority to develop the required legal documentations. More specifically, that the Combined Authority Board's approval is sought to delegate authority to officers to develop the legal documentation for the Peterborough R&D Property Co Limited, or PropCo 2 for short. Approve the company's business plan and consent to the company entering into a contract with a commercial operator which is successful in the procurement exercise. Very briefly, if I may, give a reminder of what the phase 2 is about for the benefit of members who would like a summary. The phase 2 of the new University of Peterborough is the development of a research and development centre which would link academia and industry. The centre will be a joint venture company owned by CPCA and Photocentric Limited, a profitable, rapidly growing technology company. The intention is to achieve significant sector cluster growth based on technological innovation that will transform the knowledge intensity of products, services, and jobs. This report is accompanied with a more detailed business plan for your consideration. I hope this has provided a summary of the proposal in front of you, and I commend this paper to the committee and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ruud. Councillor Holditch, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I did ask John T. Hill to come to Peterborough City Council scrutiny panel and present the other day, and this was a question asked there. But you know the site well, as I do. Currently, it's got a site with the 2 car parks that the university is sitting on, and for about 700 cars. And this is a proposal for 150. So it is a reduction in car parking in that area and indeed Peterborough itself. And also, as I understand it, the swimming pool users will still be able to access this car park as well. So it is a reduction, but also the R&D building is going to focus on green technology and engineering. So it's good. It's been a good fillip for Peterborough and the global warming as a whole.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, this is such an exciting project. So well put together. Congratulations to the team for all the hard work that they've done. Austin, I assume you're happy to propose.
For sure.
And John Holditch to second.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I haven't heard anybody again speak against or ask any questions opposing, so I will take it that this is yet another unanimous vote in favour of this incredible project in Peterborough. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 6.3. Again, this is University of Peterborough Phase 2 Manufacturing Materials Research and Development Centre project, which Steve will introduce. Steve.
Yes, hi again. So yes, this is the same project as in the last paper, and this particular paper seeks to bring forward a request from Photocentric, the joint venture partner in the development, who wish to invest and purchase an additional £1.13 million worth of shares in the joint venture company, which increases the total budget by an additional 1.13 million. And allowing the scope of the building to be increased correspondingly. If accepted, Photocentric will invest a total of 3 million, bringing the joint equity invested in the company to 16.47 million. The Photocentric share in that company will rise to 18.2% from 12.2%. The increased investment would allow for the overall size of the new centre to be enlarged across 3 floors. This results in an increased lettable area of 16% increase from 1,657 metres squares to 1,924 metres squares. The increased building scope enabled by the investment would mean that the increased lettable space to take to the market would be an additional 119 metres squared. Comparison of costs and benefits of the investment set out in 2.10 of the Business Board paper, and shows that the scenarios confirm that the combined authority is not disadvantaged as a result of this increased investment. So these proposals were considered by the Business Board on the 12th of January, and following discussion, the Business Board agreed unanimously to recommend the proposals. So the Combined Authority Board is asked to note the change request form that's also included as an additional appendix to this paper at Appendix 1. Any questions?
Any comments at all?
Good job.
No comments, Steve. So no comments at all. So Austin, you're happy to propose?
I am.
Yep. And John, again, you're happy to second? Okay, thank you very much. So again, as there have been no comments, everybody's happy to accept this in unanimous fashion. So we move on. And again, thanks to the team and the offices for what they have done on that project. Item 6.4 is the Business Board Annual Report for 1920 and the Annual Delivery Plan for 2021. Austin, would you like to say a few words on this, or are you happy again for office?
Sorry, James, I think that's possibly a typo from a previous set of notes.
My apologies.
The agenda item is The local growth fund program management. Sorry, no, we'll move on. The local enterprise partnership partnering strategy, I think, is the agenda item.
Yes, that's the Australia version of the briefing, Mayor. Sorry.
Okay, so well, you have to forgive me because I don't have that on my agenda in front of me. So, Robert, who am I introducing? There's John is waving at me ferociously at the bottom. John.
It's John T. Hill, Local Enterprise Partnership Partnering Strategy document.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm relieved that it is indeed that paper because I don't have the other papers to present. The purpose of this particular paper today is to provide a summary of the collaboration ongoing with various other LEPs over three terms. Initially, the short term, and particularly the next 3 months, in which the focus is on collaboration to share best practice between OxCam LEPs on the local economic recovery planning. All have produced recovery strategies for their boards during the course of November and December, and work has focused in the period between December and now on sharing economic impact insights and data, as well as early indications of the impact of different interventions within each LEP recovery strategy so that we can hone and perfect our own strategy, which will be at the next board meeting in March. Also over the medium term and the next 12 months, in which the OxCam LEPs will hope to demonstrate the value add that the ARC provides to the UK in strengthening longer term national recovery through the ARC's innovation assets and its ability to lead a net zero technology-based recovery that grows back greener. Collaborating in joint large-scale and ambitious projects across the ARC, it's proposed to generate for the CPCA and its local partners greater allocation of resources through the comprehensive spending review focused on innovation and green recovery and levelling up than would otherwise have been the case through a local only approach. The third term is, of course, the longer term over the next 36 months, in which focus will be on the implementation and mobilisation of the large-scale programmes across the OxCam ARC and in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough for our own projects. Delivery focus will also include the potential continuation and expansion of the Agritech Growth Initiative from a partnership between ourselves and New Anglia LEP to include SEMLEP, South East Midlands, and Greater Lincolnshire LEP as well, so as to increase the collaboration over the total rural area that we form part of. In addition, it will include collaboration across the wider LEP network to implement the insight gained through peer-to-peer LEP benchmarking and best practice sharing into the design and mobilisation of our interventions. So the board is recommended to approve the partnering strategies with the OxCam LEPs, with NARLEP, Greater Lincolnshire LEP and SEMLEP on the development of a rural growth initiative, and across the wider network to improve performance through peer-to-peer reviews of our activity and programme efficacy between ourselves and the equivalent teams at the West of England Combined Authority, who we have been paired with for the peer-to-peer review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Councillor Herbert, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, I've long had a concern that the LEP areas overlap and that we haven't really resolved that. And I'd appreciate some comment on that. I know that we are to get a further report about some of this at the March meeting. So I just find it confusing that we haven't really confirmed what our exact boundaries are. I know that we've got a legacy of some previous projects, but I just want clarity that in the work that we do with them, that will be advanced. I fully support the linkages, including because we're at the middle of an awful lot of crossroads, including economically. And I do think that in the kind of scattergun approach that was used to define LEP boundaries, we just need to help bring a bit more logic by partnership working.
Okay, thank you, Lewis. Mr. Adams.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Lewis. Your point's been raised previously. You know, I have to admit that in helping the team with prioritising their activities, dealing with some of the LEP overlaps, given the extent to which the individual LEPs have been wrestling with very short-term issues, that is something that has been pushed back on more than one occasion for that reason. But it is coming to a head, and I think the forward plan is to bring that back to the table in March. So hopefully we can draw a line under that. Notwithstanding that, though, this proposal is about collaboration and working together, and I don't see how we could do anything but support that in every respect, both with boots on the ground, with government looking down to see, you know, how we're performing, how we're acting, how we're consolidating our thinking, how we're learning from each other. There's some brilliant best practice around. There's also some failed projects that we can learn from across the various LEPs that we don't have an insight into, which is madness, actually. And there's a great opportunity to really bulk up some of the opportunities where government, I think, in the future is going to be looking for bigger, more ambitious, bite-sized projects, and that requires collaboration and a joined-up plan. There is the business board have debated all the challenges of too many cooks spoiling the broth approach to you know, too many vested interests, but the general view is that the benefits far outweigh the challenges that will be faced in getting through the mechanics of it, and left in the hands of the business board and the LEPs, which are predominantly business focused, of course, with the right processes and procedures, we can weave a way through that in a very efficient and professional manner.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. There are no further comments. This is a vote by a simple majority. With Mr. Adams in the chair proposing, do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Mayor.
Councillor Bowden, and I assume all those are in favour. Nobody's waving at me that they don't want to vote in favour of this. So yet again, that's unanimous. So thank you very much. And I believe that takes us to the end of the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Count. And the date of the next meeting will be the 24th of March, 2021. Who believe that we're nearly in March again, quite frightening, really. The arrangements will be confirmed nearer the time, and I declare this meeting closed. And I thank you all for your attendance and for the way they've managed to get through the agenda. So thank you very much and have a good day.
Congratulations, you made it.